Chapter 39-40. Seeing that Lin Yi was so experienced, the stall owner could not help but feel his aura stagnate. He said weakly, "Then I will take a step back." 6 spirit jades. You see, the quality of my blue glow grass is very good. It is not something that can be found anywhere. Lin Yi extended a hand unhurriedly. 5 spirit jades, no more. You. The stall owner originally wanted to try again, but seeing Lin Yi's determined expression, he thought that the price of 5 spirit jades was already a good deal for the blue glow grass. In the end, he could only nod and say, "All right, then 5 spirit jades it is. I will put it away for you." After saying that, the stall owner habitually scooped out the blue glow grass from the pot. People who came out to buy spirit medicine were basically for alchemy and not to buy it to plant. Therefore, they usually took it away in a bag, which was convenient to carry around. Lin Yi's eyelids twitched and he hurriedly stopped him. "Wait, boss, just give me the pot directly. I will bring it back to plant." What kind of joke was this? He was here for the ancient pure land in the basin. Buying the blue glow grass was just a cover to deceive others. "All right, up to you." Since it was just an ordinary pot, the stall owner did not suspect anything and directly nodded in agreement. Lin Yi heaved a sigh of relief. As he took out the spirit jades, he probed, "Excuse me for asking, boss, where do you usually cultivate spirit medicine? I see that the quality of your spirit medicine is quite good." His words of probing was actually because he wanted to know the other party's looks. If he could find out, he might be able to get more pure lands. "Hee, you flatter me. I don't know how to cultivate spirit medicine. These are all bought from others. For example, your pot of blue glow grass, including the soil, was bought from an unfamiliar loose cultivator." The stall owner took the spirit jades from Lin Yi and laughed happily. "So that's how it is." Lin Yi nodded his head in disappointment. In that case, it would be useless even if he continued to ask. He could only let it go. However, just as Lin Yi took the pot of blue light grass and was about to turn around and leave, a familiar voice suddenly came from behind him. "Young hero Lin, what a coincidence to see you here." Lin Yi's body suddenly stiffened. Even without turning his head, he could easily tell that the owner of the voice was his old enemy, Meng Jueguang. What was this guy doing here? What shocked Lin Yi even more was how Meng Jueguang could recognize him when he was wearing the 1,000 silk mask. Just as Lin Yi was stunned. Meng Jueguang, however, had already walked to his side. Uncharacteristically, he patted his shoulder affectionately and said with a face full of joy, "Young hero Lin, even if we have a little conflict, you don't have to pretend that you don't know me, do you? No matter what, I'm still your steward's senior brother." There was no way to avoid it. Lin Yi could only bite the bullet and face him face. He pretended to be confused and said, "Who are you?" Hearing this, Meng Jueguang was startled and looked at Lin Yi. Then, his expression suddenly changed and he said awkwardly, "So you're not Lin Yi. I got the wrong person." Lin Yi instantly let out a sigh of relief. As long as he didn't recognize him, it was fine. If Meng Jueguang found out that Lin Yi was the same person as him, then this matter would be really dangerous. At that time, Meng Jueguang would spread the news to the southern sky gate. Even with Lin Yi's current foundation establishment middle stage strength, it would be very difficult to deal with such a strong enemy. Whether or not he could keep his life was still unknown. Not daring to stay any longer, Lin Yi picked up the pot of blue light grass and glanced at Meng Jueguang. After that, he turned around and left. Looking at Lin Yi's hurried back, Meng Jueguang rubbed his chin thoughtfully. He couldn't help but mutter, from the back, "Why does this person look exactly like Lin Yi? Not only is their figure similar, but even their temperament is exactly the same. What the hell?" Inadvertently, Meng Juiguang's gaze swept across the stall owner's hand. Suddenly, he was slightly stunned. The spiritual jade in the stall owner's hand was actually very familiar to him. "Stall owner, let me take a look at your spiritual jade." A thought flashed through Meng Juiguang's mind and he hurriedly called out. "What?" The stall owner looked at him warily. This person must be sick in the head. Who would ask someone for a spiritual jade for no reason? Was he trying to rob someone in broad daylight? Meng Juiguang casually took out 2 spiritual jades and threw them in front of the stall owner. He said hurriedly, "I'll give you 2 spiritual jades in exchange for 1. This should be fine, right? Hurry up and give it to me." The stall owner took the 2 spiritual jades and examined them suspiciously. He found that they were both good jades full of spiritual energy. Only then did he throw the spiritual jade that Meng Juiguang pointed at. Meng Juiguang took it and carefully examined it twice. He thoroughly confirmed that the spiritual jade in his hand was actually the one that he had used before. Speaking of which, this was a complete coincidence. As everyone knew, the process of cultivation had always been boring. Once, when he used spiritual jades to cultivate, Meng Juiguang once had a whim and wanted to try microcarving spiritual jades. In the end, it turned out that he did not have this talent at all. A beautiful woman had been carved deeply and shallowly by him. It was extremely ugly and unsightly. Thus, there was this strange spiritual jade in his hand. However, Meng Juiguang remembered clearly that this strange spiritual jade should have been given to Meng Tong along with the other useless spiritual jades to be exchanged with Lin Yi. Why would it appear here inexplicably? In addition, there was another thing that greatly puzzled Meng Juiguang. The spiritual jade that he had given to Meng Tong was a useless spiritual jade that had almost exhausted most of its spiritual energy. However, the spiritual jade in his hand was clearly full of spiritual energy. Today's matter was really strange. But if this spiritual jade in his hand was not the original one, then it was too much of a coincidence. The spiritual jade of similar size had similar patterns on it. At that time, Meng Juiguang remembered clearly that when he was bored, he randomly carved a pattern on this spiritual jade. It was a symbol that represented him, Meng Juiguang. Of course, only he himself knew what it meant. If one did not look carefully, they would definitely think that it was accidentally formed when mining spiritual jades. It was no big deal. If Meng Juiguang was a famous microcarving master, then it would not be strange. The signature or symbol of a microcarving master had always been highly sought after. It was normal for people to deliberately imitate it. However, the problem was that he was a complete layman. Why would people waste spiritual jades to imitate a failed product like him? Chapter 39-41. This guess could not be said to be not bold and bizarre, but this kind of thing might not be completely impossible. Meng Juiguang knew that the Spirit Jade Hall had a special method to instill spiritual energy into the waste jade, turning it into a treasure. However, this process was extremely long, requiring at least a few hundred years before it was possible. The world was vast and full of extraordinary things. Cultivators were all people with hundreds of wisdom and remarkable abilities. Since there was the precedent of the Spirit Jade Hall, charging the spiritual jade in a short period of time might seem unreliable, but it might not be impossible. If that was the case, then the meaning of this spiritual jade really needed to be carefully considered. "Boss, where did you get this spiritual jade?" Meng Juiguang's heart stirred as he asked. The stall owner gave him a baffled look, curled his lips and said, "It was given by the customer just now." It really was him. This answer made Meng Juiguang's heart tremble. Now, he finally reacted. The first time he saw this person, he felt that he was extremely familiar, because he had seen this person's face before. Back when Yuzhe came out to look for Lin Air, he had Lin Air's portrait in his hand. Although it was somewhat different from the real person, the general outline was correct. And Meng Juiguang just happened to have looked at this portrait carefully. In other words, the person whom he had mistaken as Lin Yi should be the Lin heir that Southern Sky Gate and Yuzhe had been looking for. And what made Meng Juiguang even more suspicious was that this Lin heir actually had his strange spiritual jade. The strange spiritual jade that should have been in Lin Yi's hands. What did this mean? In addition, in order to find this Lin heir, Yuzhe had run to the Welcome Pavilion several times. The truth behind this was already on the verge of being revealed. Right now, Meng Juiguang was at least 70% sure that Lin Yi and Lin heir should be the same person, just that they had used some kind of method to change their appearance. In the cultivation world, changing one's appearance was not uncommon. Aside from using tools like the human skin mask, even some unorthodox martial techniques could achieve the same effect. Even Meng Juiguang himself found this speculation hard to believe. But if he thought about it carefully, he would realize that all the signs from before could corroborate each other. Just this point alone was enough to explain the doubts that Meng Juiguang had for a long time. The waste jade with sparse spiritual qi suddenly became a good jade with abundant spiritual qi. Although he had been urging Meng Tong and the others at the beginning, the instigator of using the despicable method of exchanging a useless jade for a good jade to trick Lin Yi was Meng Juiguang himself. And because the same method had succeeded time and time again, Meng Juiguang was secretly pleased. At the same time, he also thought that Lin Yi was an idiot who couldn't even distinguish a useless jade from a good jade. But then, as he stumbled over Lin Yi again and again, and even watched Lin Yi grow step by step into an expert that even he himself was afraid of, Meng Juiguang couldn't help but suspect that Lin Yi was a legendary newcomer. How could he have gotten to where he was today? How could he have come to such a stage today? Moreover, who was Meng Juiguang? This kind of thing. Even if he used his toes to think, he would know that there must be more to it than meets the eye. Only a brainless idiot like Meng Tong, but he, Meng Juiguang, was a smart person. Even if he got carried away for a while, he would naturally come back to his senses after a long time. Now that he thought about it, exchanging a useless jade for a good jade, this kind of trick was probably exactly what Lin Yi wanted. It was obvious that this guy had been baiting them to give him useless jade, so he could always get his way. Otherwise, even if Lin Yi was really stupid, the people around him would have stopped him when they realized that something was wrong. They wouldn't have let it happen until now and never cared about it. For a normal person, exchanging a good jade in their hands for a useless jade in someone else's hands, even if it could be exchanged for many, would be an out-and-out wastrel. But Lin Yi was obviously different. If his speculation was right, he should have some kind of way to quickly charge the useless jade. Only this could explain why the spiritual jade in Meng Juiguang's hand inexplicably turned from a useless piece of jade to a good piece of jade. Only this could explain why the simple trick of replacing a useless piece of jade with a good piece of jade, which could be seen through by ordinary people, could actually succeed time and time again. All of this was obviously a trap set by Lin Yi, waiting for them to come to him and give him the useless jade. To think that they were so complacent at first, thinking that it was rare for them to take advantage of Lin Yi. Now that they thought about it, from the beginning to the end, they were basically played by this guy. In this way, all the things that happened before and after were linked together. The truth was already on the verge of being revealed. Even if there were still some doubts, they just needed to be further confirmed. Now, from Meng Juiguang's point of view, the fact that Lin Yi was Lin heir was basically impossible to run away from. Today's trip to the market really wasn't in vain. After thinking through all of these, Meng Juiguang couldn't help but sneer. Originally, because of Lin Yi's previous domineering performance, he had already planned to reconcile with Lin Yi. After all, a wise man submits to circumstances. This was also something that couldn't be helped. Now that Lin Yi's strength was so strong that even Meng Juiguang felt frightened, what else could he do? Now that things had developed to this point, it was simply unrealistic for him to count on his subordinates to kill Lin Yi. Regardless of whether it was Meng Tong or Murong Zhen, they were far from being Lin Yi's opponent. After all, Meng Juiguang was a smart person. He had already deeply understood that if he and Lin Yi were to openly oppose each other, he would definitely be the one to suffer in the end. Meng Tong had already gone around the gates of hell once. If he came again, he would probably be dead. If things really developed to that point, Meng Juiguang would definitely be in a passive position. At that time, even if he was promoted to third pavilion master, if he didn't have any subordinates, it would be impossible for him to suppress the overbearing Lin Yi. His situation was likely to be even more embarrassing and tragic than Liu Bianren's. Therefore, as a last resort, Meng Juiguang decided to temporarily pretend to be courteous with Lin Yi. As long as he could temporarily stabilize the situation, it didn't matter even if he lost some face. When he stabilized his position as third pavilion master in the future, it wouldn't be too late to settle the score then. Chapter 39-42. However, these were all his previous thoughts. As for now, since he had such a fatal weakness of Lin Yi, things were completely different. As long as this weakness could be confirmed, then the current situation would no longer be him bowing his head to Lin Yi. Instead, it would be the other way around, and he would make Lin Yi bow his head to him. Meng Juiguang sneered. If he could make good use of this weakness, no matter how strong and powerful Lin Yi was, he wouldn't be able to escape from his palm. What made him even happier was that Lin Yi could turn a useless jade into a good one, wasn't he? He was like a hen that laid golden eggs. As long as he could control Lin Yi, he'd be able to soar in the future. Wouldn't that be a problem? According to Meng Juiguang's speculation, this secret should be in the number 10 spiritual jade mining area. Because in the secular world, Lin Yi didn't know what spiritual jade was at all. After Lin Yi entered the number 10 mining area, he continuously mined good jade from it. Now it seemed that there was an existence similar to the spiritual eye in the number 10 mining area. As long as waste jade was placed in it, it could be filled up quickly. This also explained why Lin Yi could dig up good jade, while he and Meng Tong couldn't. The jade wasn't dug up, but rushed out. At this moment, Lin Yi, who was on the other side, was really scared out of his wits. Even with his temperament, he was still scared. Although his response just now didn't reveal any flaws on the surface, his intuition told him that Meng Juiguang was as cunning as a fox. He shouldn't be fooled so easily. Be prepared for the worst. The only thing that Lin Yi needed to consider now was what he should do if Meng Juiguang really found out about his identity. If it really came to that, Lin Yi's situation could be said to be very unfavorable. Meng Juiguang could easily use this weakness to deal with him, but he couldn't do much to the other party. The other party was the eldest senior brother in charge. After that, it might be the third pavilion master. No matter how strong Lin Yi was, he wouldn't have the chance to face him head-on unless he took the risk and found a chance to assassinate him. This method might not be completely impossible, but it would be extremely risky. Now that things have come to this, we can only take it one step at a time. Lin Yi shook his head. He couldn't be sure whether Meng Juiguang had found out or not, so he could only stay put for the time being. On this trip to the market today, he didn't run into Yu Jie and the others who were scheming to find him. Instead, it was accidentally discovered by Meng Juiguang. This kind of thing could not be described as a scam, it was simply a scam of 18 generations of ancestors. Wiping away the cold sweat on his forehead, Lin Yi suppressed his worries and made a trip to the Hong Chamber of Commerce as planned. With regards to Lin Yi's sudden visit, even a calm old shopkeeper like Hong Zhong couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. Unlike Lin Yi, with Hong Zhong's position and level, as well as his close relationship with many of the upper echelons of the three great pavilions, Even the slightest movement from the three great pavilions could not escape his eyes and ears. Perhaps in Lin Yi's knowledge, the ones who were investigating his identity were only the Southern Sky Gate and Yuzhe. But Hong Zhong knew that Nan Tianba, the eldest of the three heroes of the Nan family, had already returned from a mission. This person, even in the circle of core disciples of the three great pavilions, was famous for being not to be trifled with. Furthermore, with the backing of the Nantian family of the Middle Island, many of the upper echelons of the three great pavilions were rather tolerant of him. Not to mention Nan Tianba's protectiveness. It had always been common knowledge that when he found out about Nan Tianyong's death, he would definitely fly into a rage. Although for some unknown reason, he hadn't made any big movements for the time being, one thing was certain, this person would definitely not relax in tracking down the murderer of his brother. When facing the threat of such a formidable enemy, nothing had actually happened to Lin Air until now. Not only was he safe and sound, he even dared to openly walk around the market. Even Hong Zhong couldn't help but be flabbergasted by such courage and ability. What shocked Hong Zhong even more was that in just a short span of 2 to 3 months, Lin Yi's strength had actually skyrocketed again. Lin Yi's middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm could fool others, but he couldn't fool Hong Zhong. With Hong Zhong's unfathomable strength and eyesight, unless it was an expert of the same level, no one could hide their realm in front of him. Even Lin Yi was no exception. This Lin Yi looked very young, and the last time they met, Hong Zhong could clearly feel that he had not advanced for long. However, he didn't expect that from the peak of the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm to the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm, a threshold that a normal person might not be able to cross in 100 years, could be reached in just a short span of 2 to 3 months. Even Hong Zhong, who had seen countless people, had never seen or heard of this kind of thing. Young hero Lin, long time no see, I trust you have been well. Hong Zhong secretly suppressed the surprise in his heart and took the initiative to greet him. Shopkeeper Hong, I trust you have been well since we last met. Lin Yi smiled and cupped his hands in greeting, then immediately went straight to the point. One does not come to a temple without a cause. Today, I have come to ask for a favor, and I hope shopkeeper Hong can help me. Well said, well said. If there is anything young hero Lin needs, please say it. This old man will definitely do his best. Hong Zhong immediately said straightforwardly. Having seen countless people, Hong Zhong had developed a good eyesight. Now, in Hong Zhong's heart, Lin Yi was a stock with unquestionable potential. In the future, it was very likely that he would become a person with great achievements. Being calculative was too short-sighted. At this time, to be able to do Lin Yi a favor, in his eyes, was a good thing that he could not ask for more. Lin Yi was overjoyed. He immediately repeated what he had said to Qin Heihu to Hong Zhong. After listening, Hong Zhong immediately called the shopkeeper over and gave him some instructions. To him, it was a small matter to purchase rare elixirs such as the heart-devouring exquisite grass. To him, it was just a small matter. Once he gave the order, someone would naturally do it for him. With such a simple matter, he could sell a rare favor to Lin Yi. Even if it was measured purely by the eyes of a businessman, it was still a great profit. Then, thank you very much, shopkeeper Hong. Lin Yi said gratefully. In this way, he finally had some confidence as to whether or not he could obtain the heart-devouring exquisite grass. With a Chamber of Commerce giant like the Hong Chamber of Commerce and a resourceful unorthodox person like Qin Heihu working together, if they still could not purchase the heart-devouring exquisite grass, then it could only be said that this was the will of heaven. Lin Yi had no fate with the heart-devouring exquisite grass. Young hero Lin is too polite. Hong Zhong smiled. Before Lin Yi left, he specially reminded him, the eldest of the three heroes of the Nan family, Nan Tianba, has returned. This person is not to be underestimated. Recently, he seemed to have encountered some trouble, so there has been no news of him. However, don't underestimate him. Chapter 39-43. If it was before, the information wouldn't have affected Lin Yi too much. After all, he had successfully diverted the attention of the Southern Sky Gate and Yuzhe to Kong Mingming. If Nan Tianba were to return, he should have been misled as well. However, the sudden situation just now had placed the danger in front of Lin Yi. If Meng Juiguang had really seen through his identity and leaked the information to the Southern Sky Gate and Yuzhe, then he would have to consider one thing: how to deal with Nan Tianba. Now that he had broken through to the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm, Lin Yi's strength had skyrocketed. If he was given a good opportunity, he might be able to deal with the Southern Sky Gate like how he killed Nan Tianyong. However, if his opponent was Nan Tianba, who was on a completely different level, then there was nothing he could do. Although he was unwilling to admit it, it was the truth. Facing such a powerful opponent, Lin Yi had no chance of winning. He could only run for his life, and he might not even be able to escape. To prepare for a rainy day, Lin Yi had to think of a way to prepare. If he allowed the situation to develop to this stage, then it would truly be a tragedy. After leaving the Hong Merchant Guild, Lin Yi did not stay for long. He immediately returned to the Welcome Pavilion. However, before returning to his cave abode, he purposely found a secluded corner to observe from afar. The scene that he saw caused his heart to skip a beat. Meng Juiguang and Murongzhen were sitting next to the tea table beside the wooden house, flirting and chatting over tea. Lin Yi was not surprised at all by this adulterous couple hanging out together. However, Meng Juiguang's appearance here was definitely not to fool around with Murongzhen. It was obvious that he had an ulterior motive. This Meng Juiguang was obviously trying to use this opportunity to confirm if he was the same Lin heir that he had met at the market. Luckily, Lin Yi was cautious enough to keep an eye out. Otherwise, if he suddenly appeared, even if Meng Juiguang was still a little uncertain, he would definitely be a suspect now. Lin Yi immediately dispelled the idea of going back to the cave immediately. He stayed where he was and started to waste time with Meng Juiguang. In any case, Lin Yi had always been in closed-door cultivation. As long as he did not take the initiative to appear, Meng Juiguang would not be able to confirm whether he was in the cave or not. Even if he tried to call the door, it would be useless. Cultivators never ignored people when they were in closed-door cultivation. Meng Juiguang stayed in Murongzhen's wooden house until the middle of the night. When he didn't see Lin Yi, he finally left resentfully. Before he left, he didn't give up and told Murongzhen to keep an eye on Lin Yi's whereabouts. However, Lin Yi's patience was far beyond that of an ordinary person. After Meng Juiguang left, he waited until he was sure that Murongzhen was completely silent and let down his guard before he quietly returned to his cave. This response might not be able to dispel Meng Juiguang's suspicions, but it was still better than having his suspicions confirmed. As long as there was no concrete evidence, this matter was still groundless. Meng Juiguang did not dare to act recklessly. This was the only chance Lin Yi could fight for. A few days later, Meng Juiguang did not continue to look for trouble. There was no news from Southern Sky Gate or Yuzhe either. Lin Yi's response seemed to be quite effective. Following that, Welcoming Pavilion's pavilion master, Hu Yunfeng, gathered all the newcomers. Once again, all the rookies from the 3 pavilions were gathered together. Although the rookie assessment had ended, it did not mean that the rookies were completely free. Before the announcement of the newcomer assessment, Hu Yunfeng had personally said to all the newcomers that she would give the newcomers from Mysterious Pavilion and Blue Cloud Pavilion a chance to challenge the other pavilions. Challenge the other pavilions. Ever since the newcomers joined the Welcoming Pavilion, so many things had happened, and so many trials had taken place. This was the first time something like this had happened. Before this, the three pavilions had always done it separately. In an instant, the newcomers from the three pavilions had a tense atmosphere. Putting aside the internal affairs of each pavilion, this could be considered a competition between the three pavilions. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a battle between the three pavilions. At least at a time like this, the newcomers at the scene still had some collective consciousness. The reason for this challenge was to show fairness. Although everyone knew that the strong preyed on the weak was the unchanging rule of the cultivation world, as the upper echelons of the three pavilions, they had to at least put on a show. Even if it couldn't shut everyone's mouth, it was enough to make most people speechless. At this moment, the atmosphere at the scene was unprecedentedly tense. Furthermore, the difference in treatment was obvious. Many newcomers from Mysterious Pavilion and Blue Cloud Pavilion coveted the mountaintop cave abodes of the Soaring Sky Pavilion newcomers. They dreamed of replacing them. Now that the opportunity was right in front of them, they were all hesitant to move forward. They were the typical people who loved dragons. As the weakest group in the three great pavilions, they all wanted so-called fairness. However, when they were given the chance to use their strength to fight against others, they didn't have the confidence to do so. Apart from Lin Yi and a few other freakish newcomers, the Soaring Sky Pavilion was obviously far superior to the other two pavilions in terms of strength, especially the newcomers from Blue Cloud Pavilion. Even if people like Lin Yi and Murongzhen were included, among the newcomers from Blue Cloud Pavilion, only 6 had successfully reached the Foundation Establishment realm. The rest were only at the peak of the Heaven stage. Meanwhile, among the newcomers from Soaring Sky Pavilion, there were already a total of 10 early-stage Foundation Establishment experts. As for the newcomers of Soaring Sky Pavilion, over the past few months, their respective deep backgrounds had finally begun to play a role. Even if they couldn't obtain building foundation pills during the newcomer trial, they could still obtain them through various private channels. With their talent and background, coupled with the fact that they had enough pills, the success rate of breaking through to the Foundation Establishment realm was naturally not low. Among the 15 newcomers from Soaring Sky Pavilion, there were 10 early-stage Foundation Establishment experts. This was clear proof. As for the newcomers from Mysterious Pavilion, although this group of old men could be considered tyrannical during their time as newcomers, breaking through to the Foundation Establishment realm did not depend solely on strength. In terms of pills and resources, they clearly could not compare to the second and third generation cultivators from Soaring Sky Pavilion. As a result, there were only 6 people who had successfully reached the Foundation Establishment realm, which was equal to the newcomers from Blue Cloud Pavilion. Overall, the comparison of the strength of the newcomers from the 3 pavilions was not much different from previous years. Soaring Sky Pavilion was the strongest, followed by Mysterious Pavilion, and Blue Cloud Pavilion was still the weakest. Chapter 39-44. Now that the so-called Fair Cross Pavilion Challenge opportunity was placed in front of them, they were rendered speechless and looked at each other. Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng took in the expressions of the newcomers and could not help but sneer in his heart. Didn't you bunch of newcomers clamor for fairness? Now that a great opportunity is placed in front of you, this Pavilion Master wants to see how you're going to face this fairness that you've been dreaming of. Faced with such a gap in strength, the Mysterious Pavilion and Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers, who were originally full of ambition, were all speechless for a moment. Although the Soaring Pavilion newcomers were powerful, it did not mean that every one of them was an early-stage Foundation Establishment expert. Among the 15, at least 5 of them were only at the Heaven stage Great Perfection, which was not very strong. But the problem was that if only a few people came forward to challenge, even if they succeeded, it was obvious what kind of situation they would face when they reached the Soaring Pavilion's territory. Not only would they become the target of public criticism, they might even be blacklisted by many Soaring Pavilion disciples. From then on, they would be targeted everywhere, and it would be difficult for them to advance. This was not a consequence that ordinary newcomers could bear. In the end, the mentality of cultivators was not much different from that of ordinary people. When one's strength was not strong enough, they would have a herd mentality. If everyone issued a challenge to the soaring pavilion newcomers, then perhaps many people would be eager to try. But now, with everyone's apprehension, the scene inevitably fell into an awkward silence. In the eyes of the mysterious pavilion newcomers, although the soaring pavilion's mountaintop cave abode was good, their current cave abode was not bad either. It was just that the gap was not enough for them to take the risk out of desperation. As for the Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers, they were truly envious of the mountaintop cave abode, but most of them were only at the heaven stage great perfection. Even if they faced the weakest newcomer from the soaring pavilion, they might not have a chance of winning. If they really jumped out to challenge, they would be laughed at instead. What? Isn't this something all of you strongly requested? Now that the matter has come to a head, why aren't any of you saying anything? Hu Yunfeng deliberately swept her gaze over the clear cloud pavilion's new disciples, her eyebrows raised in disdain. The newcomers were all speechless and unconsciously shrunk their necks. At this time, they did not dare to rashly stand out. An inter-pavilion challenge. This is something that you all strongly requested. This pavilion master deliberately applied to the higher-ups, but in the end, you don't even dare to fart. If you're so cowardly and irresponsible, how can you achieve great things in the future? As Hu Yunfeng reprimanded the rookies, his eyes finally landed on Qiao Hongkai. He still clearly remembered that this fellow had shouted the loudest back then. Being stared at by Hu Yunfeng like this, Qiao Hongkai couldn't hold it in anymore. He had a fiery temper, how could he stand Hu Yunfeng's provocation? Not to mention, with his current strength. Unless the opponent was an expert at the peak of the early stage of the foundation building realm like Meng Tong or Murong Zhen, they should have a certain chance of winning against any expert from the Soaring Sky Pavilion. However, Lin Yi had given them instructions beforehand. He told him and Xiao Ran not to challenge him recklessly. Whether it was him, Qiao Hongkai or Xiao Ran, they were not the kind of people who liked to pick on pushovers. However, if they were to challenge the early-stage foundation building realm experts of the same level in the Soaring Sky Pavilion, it was hard to say how much of a chance they had of winning. The risk was not small. Moreover, because of Lin Yi's existence, he could guarantee that the two of them would have enough medicinal pills. In comparison, the demand for the cave abode at the top of the mountain was not too high. It was just that it was not worth taking such a risk for the cave abode at the top of the mountain. Qiao Hongkai had a fiery temper, but he had always listened to Lin Yi. Since Lin Yi had already spoken, he could only suppress his impulse. He simply closed his eyes and ignored Hu Yunfeng's mockery. Qiao Hongkai ignored Hu Yunfeng and Xiao Ran even less so. As for the other experts from Clear Cloud Pavilion, Meng Tong was still in a state of recovering from his severe injuries. Murong Zhen was kicked out by the Soaring Sky Pavilion in the first place, so there was no reason for them to rush up to Clear Cloud Pavilion's doorstep to make a fool out of themselves. Li Jingming was determined to keep a low profile. None of them had any intention of stepping out to challenge Hu Yunfeng. Still no one wants to challenge you. This pavilion lord has heard many people talking about how amazing this batch of Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples are, how heaven-defying they are. Too bad, it looks like it's all a joke. Cowering like a turtle, is this the so-called strength in your eyes? Hu Yunfeng continued to provoke them with cold words. Not only was he unforgiving, but this was also a rare opportunity for him to consolidate his prestige. He wanted to teach these ignorant newcomers a lesson so that he could manage them better in the future. But, he had forgotten that not all newbies would be suppressed by his schemes. At least, Lin Yi wouldn't be able to do so. Not allowing Qiao Hongkai and Xiao Ran to challenge him did not mean that Lin Yi could not do it. With his current strength, he could absolutely suppress any newcomer. There was no risk at all. Pavilion Lord Hu, you haven't even announced the specific rules. How are people supposed to challenge you? Don't you think it's too early to say that you're a coward? Lin Yi said indifferently. Hu Yunfeng's face turned red. He immediately realized that he had been a little too hasty. He straightened his neck and said, "You newcomer really have no understanding. Do you need me to say more about this? The rules are naturally the same as the challenge. The only difference is that you can challenge other pavilions." Lin Yi smiled nonchalantly. He then stood up and said, "All right, I'll take the lead and challenge the newcomer from the soaring pavilion, Kong Ming." As soon as he said this, the audience suddenly went into an uproar. Everyone's eyes immediately focused on Kong Ming. Looking at all the newcomers from the 3 pavilions, there were 2 people in the limelight. One was the monstrous rising blue cloud pavilion's Lin Yi, and the other was the soaring pavilion's Kong Ming, who was supported by young Master Su and Pavilion Lord Hu Yunfeng. The key was that these 2 people came from the secular world. It was said that there was even a deep hatred between them. Unfortunately, because the 2 of them belonged to the Blue Cloud Pavilion and the Soaring Pavilion respectively, in the eyes of the public, they were basically kings that didn't meet each other. There had never been a chance for a head-on confrontation. But this time, the opportunity finally came. Everyone present had the intention to watch the show. Being called out by Lin Yi in public, Kong Ming had long expected this. With the conflict between him and Lin Yi would definitely seize this opportunity to attack him. Therefore, Kong Ming had been secretly preparing since the beginning. It was just that his trump card was not ready yet. Chapter 39:45. It was the same excuse again. It was almost the same as when he dealt with Shi Yuda during the newcomer challenge. During this period of time, Kong Ming had used similar tricks many times. After all, he was different from Lin Yi. As an alchemist, even if he had a backer like Su Lingchong and relied on elixirs to succeed in building his foundation, his actual combat power was still lacking. He didn't have any powerful martial arts skills, so he had almost no chance of winning when facing an expert of the same level. Fortunately, he had learned the alchemic fire bomb. The lethality of this move was beyond doubt. The only weakness was that it required a long preparation time. If he didn't use other means to delay, his opponent wouldn't be stupid enough to give him such an opportunity after he entered the ring. Another point was that the alchemic fire bomb might be immune to certain mental cultivation methods. However, Kong Ming wasn't stupid. He would choose his opponent to use it on. "You need some time." Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. With the various conflicts between him and Kong Ming's little scheme certainly couldn't escape his eyes. However, he didn't intend to expose it in public. He said with an indifferent expression, "Up to you. After all, you're a newcomer. You have to have some privileges." This sentence made all the newcomers look at Kong Ming with some unfriendliness and jealousy. Unlike Lin Yi, even if others were jealous of Lin Yi's limelight, they were still in awe of Lin Yi's powerful strength in private. However, Kong Ming was different. Other than Su Lingchong and Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng's care, no one could see any signs of strength from this guy. Although there were a few times when he made a move, it was a strong performance of killing his opponent in one move. However, the feeling that Kong Ming gave people was that he wasn't a real powerhouse, but more like a treacherous villain who relied on pampering to get his position. It was normal for people to look down on people like that. Even if Lin Yi wasn't a popular guy, if he could step all over Kong Xiaoming, he'd be able to do it. That would be to everyone's satisfaction. Kong Ming didn't care about everyone's unkind eyes at all. Instead, he grinned. Lin Yi was still as stupid and arrogant as ever. "That's perfect. I'll use the pill fire bomb to send you to the Western Paradise. At that time, I'll take a good look at the faces of these people." After dawdling for a while, everything was ready. Kong Ming slowly walked into the ring with a victorious smile. Yao Yao hooked her finger at Lin Yi and said, "Come on, we can finally put an end to this. However, let me say this first. Although we are old acquaintances, I can't guarantee that I will be merciful. I might even kill you later." Ha! It's really hard to understand. You're just a guy who only knows how to take advantage of the situation. Where do you get your confidence and courage from? Just by stalling for time. Lin Yi smiled indifferently. Kong Ming was never a strong opponent in his eyes. He was never a strong enemy in his eyes. At most, he was on the same level as Meng Tong. Even if he was smarter than Meng Tong, it was a pity that his strength was still his weakness. In front of absolute strength, any strategy was just a joke. Moreover, Kong Ming's little trick was not a strategy at all. At most, it was just an insignificant skill. Humph. Insignificant skill. You can only show off your eloquence at this time. If you die with grievances later, don't blame me. Kong Ming sneered. In terms of strength, he did admit that he was not Lin Yi's opponent. He still had this self-awareness. However, now that the pill fire bomb was ready, what could Lin Yi do even if he was strong? A pill fire bomb was thrown at his face. Last time, Shi Yuda was blasted into a cripple on the spot. Now, after a few months, he was still a cripple. Lin Yi, this arrogant fool, was about to follow in his footsteps. As they spoke, the two of them stood at one end of the arena. The audience unconsciously held their breath and opened their eyes wide in anticipation of this rare duel. Lin Yi was the strongest newcomer in Blue Cloud Pavilion. This was without a doubt. As for Kong Ming, at least in terms of fame and popularity, he was also the #1 newcomer in Soaring Sky Pavilion. Therefore, the duel between the two of them could be regarded as the pinnacle duel among the newcomers in Welcoming Pavilion. With Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng's order, the pinnacle duel among the newcomers officially began. However, in Kong Ming's eyes, the duel had just begun and was already over. Because in his expectation, as long as he threw the pill fire bomb in his hand at Lin Yi's face, Lin Yi would definitely die. However, judging from Lin Yi's expression, this fool should not be completely aware of the danger. Kong Ming really did not expect that the various grievances between him and Lin Yi in the secular world would end in such a duel after coming to Heaven Stage Island. Moreover, he would personally kill Lin Yi in front of everyone. This was a wonderful scene that could only appear in a dream. Go to hell! Kong Ming roared ferociously. He immediately threw the pill fire bomb in his hand at Lin Yi's face without hesitation. At the same time, he erupted with all the strength in his body and retreated with all his might. The pill fire bomb was not only extremely powerful, but it also did not have eyes. If one was not careful, it was very likely that even Kong Ming would be killed. That would be terrible. Therefore, it was better to stay as far away from it as possible. However, just as the pill fire bomb was about to leave his hand, Lin Yi, who was originally dozens of feet away, suddenly moved. Before Kong Ming could react, he had already appeared in front of him the next moment. Your speed is really a mess. Lin Yi smiled coldly and then grabbed Kong Ming's left hand with one hand. He curled his lips and said, "It seems that you are hiding something in your hand. Do you need my help?" In an instant, Kong Ming was so scared that he had goosebumps all over his body. Not only was he shocked by Lin Yi's terrifying speed, but more importantly, at this moment, in his left hand, there was a pill fire bomb that had been prepared for a long time. If this thing was held in his hand for a long time, even he himself would not be able to control it. If it accidentally exploded in his hand, then it would be a big joke. Hey, do you want to die? Let go of me, bastard. Kong Ming Ming was so anxious that he was flustered. The trump card suddenly became a hot potato and a life-threatening talisman. Chapter 3946. When Lin Yi spoke, Kong Ming was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. At this moment, he even wanted to cut off his own hand with a knife. In any case, it was better to lose a hand than to lose his life. New Deacon, you seem to be very scared. Don't you want to kill me with this pill firebomb? Why don't we play a game? We'll stand here and see who dies first. Lin Yi said with a teasing smile. What? Stand here and don't move. Are you a madman or a fool? Kong Ming Ming was so scared that his face turned pale. If Lin Yi was just a strong enemy in his eyes before, then now this guy had become an out-and-out madman. Kong Xiaoming wanted to kill Lin Yi even in his dreams. The stronger Lin Yi was, the stronger his desire for vengeance was. However, if the opponent was a madman who didn't know what was good for him, then it was a different story. Who would want to risk their lives against a madman? However, no matter how Kong Ming Ming struggled, Lin Yi just held his hand and didn't move at all. After all, the strength gap between them was too big. Lin Yi was already a master in the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, while Kong Ming Ming was only in the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. They were 2 levels apart. How could a guy who couldn't even defeat a master of the same level break free from Lin Yi's hand? Hey, you madman, let go of me. I really can't hold it anymore. This time Kong Ming Ming was really scared by Lin Yi. The feeling of holding a bomb in his hand, and it would explode at any time, was as horrifying as it could be. The key point was that this pill fire bomb was made by him, so he knew how powerful it was. Once it really exploded, he didn't know what would happen to the madman Lin Yi, but at least he knew that he was definitely going to die this time. It was impossible to leave a whole body. The most crucial problem was alchemic fire was irreversible. Once it was activated, it could not be taken back. This was completely different from Lin Yi's true chi bomb. Can't hold on any longer. Lin Yi's expression was as calm as ever. Then let go. You haven't tasted your own pill flame bomb, have you? In Kong Xiaoming's eyes, however, Lin Yi was as evil as he could imagine. This was the first time he felt a bone-chilling fear from Lin Yi. Even if he was lucky enough to escape today, he wouldn't be able to. He would probably be traumatized for the rest of his life. Neither retreat nor fight. Just what are these 2 doing? Seeing the 2 of them in a stalemate, the spectators below the stage could not help but frown. Only Kong Ming Ming and Lin Yi knew about the pill fire bomb. The spectators below the stage had no idea. They only saw that Lin Yi suddenly grabbed Kong Ming Ming's left hand, and then the 2 of them inexplicably stopped moving. They were looking forward to the fight between the 2 strong rookies, and both of them would be injured. Even if they did not directly kill each other, they would at least become disabled and never be able to rise again. But what was the current situation? Huff. Huff. Nothing had been done yet. Kong Xiaoming's breath was coming out like a bellows. Amidst the panic and fear, he finally understood one thing: Lin Yi was playing with him for real. That's right. Lin Yi was indeed playing for real. He was well aware of the power of Kong Ming Ming's pill fire bomb. After all, his vital energy bomb was almost the same move. If it had exploded at such a close distance before, not only would Kong Ming Ming die, but he would also not be much better off. But now, after his strength had skyrocketed, Lin Yi was not so worried. Because his identity was very likely to have been seen through by Meng Juiguang, he was now very eager to try out his current strength out of consideration for the crisis. With his strength and vital energy body protection, Kong Ming Ming's pill fire bomb of this level would not cause a fatal threat. But to what extent the final protection was, it could be seen how strong he was. Finally, Kong Ming Ming could not bear the huge pressure that made people collapse. He took the initiative to beg for mercy. Lin Yi, oh no, Boss Lin Yi, I know you are powerful. Can you stop playing with me? As long as you let me go, I will admit defeat now. I will admit defeat immediately, without any hesitation. Let you go. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and said with a playful smile, what's in it for me? Anyway, as long as you die, your cave residence will naturally belong to me. What's in it for me to let you go? Oh yes, I heard that your cave residence is number 1 on the top of the mountain. It seems to be quite good. I am interested in living there. I will die, but won't you die? You lunatic, do you know how powerful the pill-fire bomb in my hand is? Kong Ming Ming was stimulated to the point of hysteria. There may be human beings who were not afraid of death, but Kong Ming Ming was definitely not one of them. He was not only afraid of death, but he was absolutely afraid of death. Otherwise, he would not have tried to find a way to hug someone's thigh. It was not easy to find a big tree like Su Ling Chong. He thought that he could summon the wind and summon the rain on the Heaven Stage Island. If he was killed by Lin Yi at this time, or even killed by his own pill-fire bomb, then he would really have no place to cry. The words, die with everlasting regret, were simply tailor-made for him. At this point, the people under the stage had already reacted. Although the words pill-fire bomb were unfamiliar, it was associated with Kong Ming Ming's identity as an alchemist and his previous performance in the Newcomer Challenge. This trick was not difficult to understand. It was just that what the people under the stage could not understand was that Kong Ming Ming's trump card was not only unable to exert its power in front of Lin Yi this time, but it became a hot potato that he could not get rid of. He was forced into a situation where he could not get off the tiger by Lin Yi. For a time, everyone couldn't help but start to look at each other. Looking at the embarrassed appearance of Kong Ming Ming on the stage, and then looking at Lin Yi's calm expression, this was not the peak of the newcomers' showdown at all. Kong Ming Ming, the newcomer deacon who had always been swaggering, was not even worth a fart in front of Lin Yi. Kong Ming Ming desperately wanted to break free, but Lin Yi always had an unshakable expression. It seemed that the pill-fire bomb that even Kong Ming Ming himself was afraid of was really not worth mentioning in his eyes. This kind of feeling, at most, was holding a small gun in his hand that could not even break a piece of skin, that was all. Chapter 39-47. The difference in strength between him and Lin Yi was so huge that he couldn't see the end of it. It would be wishful thinking if he wanted to break free from Lin Yi's grasp. The only way was to chop off his left hand as mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, not only was Kong Ming Ming afraid of death, but he was also afraid of pain. He wouldn't be able to do such a manly thing even if he had the guts to do so. Kong Ming Ming couldn't break free no matter how hard he tried, and he didn't dare to cut off his own arm. Playing a little trick was completely useless. Seeing the Dan fire bomb in his hand getting more and more violent, Kong Ming Ming's heart was in his throat. No longer caring about his face, Kong Ming Ming shouted, "I've lost. I surrender. I'll give up, okay." He wasn't just shouting at Lin Yi. Judging from Lin Yi's attitude, Kong Ming Ming knew that even if he surrendered, Lin Yi might not give him the chance. Therefore, he was shouting at the crowd, especially the pavilion master of Welcoming Pavilion, Hu Yunfeng. As soon as he said that, the crowd was in an uproar. Kong Ming Ming had purposely lowered his voice when he begged for mercy, so they couldn't hear it clearly. However, now that he shouted it in front of everyone, it was hard for them not to hear it clearly. Did I hear it wrong? Kong Ming Ming surrendered. The crowd looked at each other with a strange expression. They had expected that Kong Ming Ming was no match for Lin Yi. However, he was a newcomer that Su Lingchong and Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng supported. Even if he didn't care about his own face, he should at least care about the faces of the people above him. Being forced by Lin Yi to surrender and beg for mercy in front of everyone was too embarrassing. The truth was that Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng, who always paid attention to his image, had his face as black as the bottom of a pot. Wasn't Kong Mingming's words a slap to his face in front of everyone? Fortunately, Su Lingchong was not present. This young master had been busy competing with the South Heaven Gate for the position of the first senior brother supervisor of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Recently, it had reached a crucial moment. That was why he didn't come over. Otherwise, if he was here and Kong Mingming dared to embarrass him like this, he would definitely be killed. Kong Mingming was not a fool. If young Master Su was here, he would probably have a different kind of righteous expression. But now, no matter how unhappy Hu Yunfeng was, as long as he shouted this in front of everyone, then Hu Yunfeng must come forward to protect him. Otherwise, it would be a serious dereliction of duty. As expected. Although Hu Yunfeng's face was dark, after hearing Kong Mingming's plea, he still appeared on the arena in a flash and said in a clear voice, "In that case, this duel ends here. Lin Yi, you can let go now." After saying this, Hu Yunfeng's eyes stared deadly at Lin Yi. If Lin Yi made any strange movements that did not conform to the rules, he could take the opportunity to attack him. He wanted to vent the anger in his heart. However, Lin Yi only paused for a moment before he cooperated and let go. He said calmly, "Since Pavilion Master Hu has said so, then I will be merciful and let you go. In that case, I'll be merciful and let you go. However, whether you can survive or not will depend on your own luck." After saying this, before the crowd could react, Lin Yi's figure suddenly retreated. At the same time, Hu Yunfeng's expression also changed. Without saying a word, he dashed off the arena. At this moment, there was only Kong Mingming left on the arena. At first, he thought that his plan had worked and he felt quite lucky. However, he soon realized that the pill fire bomb in his hand was on the verge of exploding. After coming to his senses, Kong Mingming immediately swung his hand in horror, desperately trying to throw the pill fire bomb out. Unfortunately, before he could completely let go, the pill fire bomb had already exploded. Boom! The ground shook violently, and the expressions of the people below the arena changed dramatically. When the dust settled, the arena was astonishingly destroyed by more than half. The protection circle of the welcoming pavilion wasn't that high-leveled, but Lin Yi seemed to be the only one who'd been able to do something like this. Who would have thought that Kong Xiaoming, that spineless coward, would be such a tough character? With such power, it could only be defeated by a freak like Lin Yi. Otherwise, if it had been any other newcomer present, they would have died without any possibility of survival. This guy, Kong Mingming, really had some skills. What they did not know was that this time, in order to kill Lin Yi, Kong Mingming deliberately held back the pill fire bomb for a long time. The power had reached the limit of what he could do. That was why even he himself could not control it. This time, the pill fire bomb that he deliberately held back not only did not blow up Lin Yi, but also caused him to fall into it. Originally, thanks to the intervention of Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng, although this time Kong Mingming was extremely thrilling, he still had the opportunity to throw out the pill fire bomb in time and escape unscathed. Unfortunately, Lin Yi did not give him this opportunity at all. At the moment when he let go, he secretly inserted a stream of true qi into it. If he could still hold on until the pill fire bomb was thrown out, then he would really be a living ghost. With great difficulty, he escaped a disaster. In the end, he did not expect that in the end, he was still played by Lin Yi. This time, Kong Mingming was really bloody unlucky. Like everyone else, Lin Yi stared at the situation on the arena. Now he also wanted to know one thing, whether Kong Mingming was dead or alive. Although with the comparison of their current strength, it was difficult for Kong Ming to pose a real threat to him. But in view of all the past grievances, Lin Yi did not mind taking this opportunity to kill Kong Ming. After a while, a sharp-eyed person in the audience discovered Kong Xiaoming in the ruins of the arena. His body was riddled with wounds. His skin and flesh were all red with patches of charred black. It was a sight that made one's hair stand on end. Hu Yunfeng's eyelids twitched. No matter how much Kong Ming embarrassed him, he was, after all, a person who Su Lingchong had ordered to take good care of. If he let him die here, it would be difficult to explain to Su Lingchong later. With a flash, Hu Yunfeng appeared next to Kong Ming. He carefully measured his breath and found that it was more exhaling than inhaling. It seemed that he was about to die. But fortunately, he still had one last breath. Hu Yunfeng hesitated for a moment, then fiercely gritted his teeth. He took out a 4th-grade Great Recover pill from his bosom and fed it to Kong Ming. Although the 4th-grade Great Recover pill was precious, if he could exchange it for Kong Ming's life, not only would he be saving Kong Ming's life, but the key was that at the same time, he could also make Su Lingchong owe him a favor. It was quite worthwhile. Chapter 39-48. Even though Kong Ming was not far from death, as long as he had the 4th-grade Great Revitalizing Pill to save his life, it was basically impossible for him to die. However, Lin Yi didn't have too many regrets. As far as he was concerned, if Kong Xiaoming died just like that, it would be great. But even if Kong Xiaoming didn't die, it wasn't a bad thing. He had previously diverted the Southern Sky Gate and Yusha's attention to Kong Ming. He did not expect to deceive these people, but at least he could act as a smokescreen for a while. If he killed Kong Ming this time, not only would Su Lingchong and the others seek revenge, it would also attract the attention of the Southern Sky Gate and Yusha, who had been lying low for some reason. At that time, if Meng Juiguang were to appear in front of them again, Lin Yi's situation would not be far from collapsing. Therefore, in Lin Yi's eyes, Kong Ming's lucky survival was still of some use. As long as he continued to struggle at death's door, he could continue to confuse the Southern Sky Gate and Yusha, so that they would not be driven to desperate measures for the Star Ink Stone. As long as he could temporarily stabilize these people, before Meng Juiguang came into contact with them, Lin Yi still had a chance to resolve the hidden danger. Although he was not confident, he still had to try. After all, compared to the Southern Sky Gate and Yusha, or even the stronger Southern Tyrant, Meng Juiguang was only a small problem. Lin Yi did not have the strength to face Southern Tyrant at the moment, but if he only needed to get rid of Meng Juiguang, he still had a chance, provided that he found a good opportunity. It didn't matter if Kong Xiaoming was dead or alive, there were pros and cons to it. That was the reason why Lin Yi's performance was so unpredictable. Otherwise, if he really made up his mind to kill Kong Ming, with Kong Ming's insignificant cultivation, he would have died long ago even if he had 10 lives. How could he have had the chance to linger until now? If he had used a true Qi bomb to fight with him, Kong Ming would have died very quickly. However, in that case, Lin Yi would be exposed. After all, the 4th-grade Great Recover pill was a healing medicine that could save a life. Kong Ming was in such a miserable state because of his Dan fire bomb, but he still managed to hang on to his last breath. Not only did his breathing gradually stabilize, but he also quickly regained consciousness. However, before he could rejoice that he had escaped with his life, Lin Yi's next words almost made him faint. Lin Yi cleared his throat and spoke to the crowd in a loud voice. According to the rules, the number 1 cave on top of the mountain now belongs to me. However, I have no interest in this cave. If anyone here wants it, just tell me. As long as the conditions are right, it won't be a problem for me to give it to anyone. As soon as he said that, the crowd was in an uproar. They thought that today was just a cross-pavilion challenge. No matter what, they had to rely on their own strength to fight for it. They didn't expect that there would be such benefits. The number 1 cave on top of the mountain. There was no doubt that this was the best cave that a newcomer could get. There was still more than half a year before the 1-year period for newcomers. Putting aside the risk of being isolated and targeted. For all the newcomers present, this was still very tempting. Especially those newcomers who had not yet succeeded in building their foundation. In the end, they might only be one step away. If they could exchange for the number 1 cave on top of the mountain by paying some price, even if the price was not small, in their opinion, it was still very worthwhile. Of course, even if the newcomers of Mysterious Pavilion and Blue Cloud Pavilion had such thoughts, it was difficult for them to meet Lin Yi's requirements. Moreover, there was the risk of being targeted collectively. However, the newcomers of Soaring Sky Pavilion did not have such concerns. After listening to Lin Yi's words, their eyes lit up. Among them, there were many people who did not buy Kong Mingming's words. It was only because of Su Lingchong that they did not dare to openly oppose him. Even if there was an occasional bold one, they would follow Shi Yuda's footsteps and be tricked by Kong Mingming. However, right now, their opportunity had come. As long as they occupied the number 1 cave on top of the mountain, in a sense, it was equivalent to replacing Kong Mingming. Moreover, they did not need to offend Su Lingchong. They just needed to pay a small price and exchange it with Lin Yi, an unrelated outsider. At that time, even if Su Lingchong wanted to blame someone, there was no reason for him to blame them. For a moment, all the newcomers of Soaring Sky Pavilion were eager to give it a try. They had completely forgotten about the Interpavilion challenge. When Kong Mingming saw this situation, his eyes rolled back and he fainted on the spot. Relying on the care of Su Lingchong and Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng, it took him a long time to establish a certain status in front of the newcomers of Soaring Sky Pavilion. In the end, with a simple sentence from Lin Yi, all his efforts were wasted. It would be strange if he did not faint from anger. Hu Yunfeng could not help but frown. He was quite dissatisfied with Lin Yi's way of doing things. Although the welcoming pavilion did allow newcomers to exchange cave residences, it was still a private matter. Lin Yi was so brazen. Where was his dignity as a pavilion master? Lin Yi, wait a minute. This interpavilion challenge is indeed your win, but our welcoming pavilion has always been particular about benevolence. Even if you want to occupy the number 1 cave on top of the mountain, you have to at least wait until Deacon Kong recovers. Hu Yunfeng pretended to be benevolent. Wait until he recovers. If he can't recover for the rest of his life, wouldn't this interpavilion challenge be a joke? Pavilion Master Hu, don't you think that's inappropriate? Lin Yi replied with a sneer. Everyone present was also discussing. Hu Yunfeng's favoritism was indeed too obvious. What's more, many people were waiting to exchange cave residences with Lin Yi. This involved their personal interests, so they were naturally dissatisfied. Hu Yunfeng saw that the situation was a little bad. He would not do such a stupid thing to provoke public anger for Kong Mingming. He could only soften his attitude and take a step back. In any case, with Deacon Kang's current condition, it would be too disappointing to let him move out directly. How about this, give him 10 days. After 10 days, I will let you deal with the number 1 cave on top of the mountain. How about it? Okay, this is what Pavilion Master Hu said. Lin Yi smiled faintly. For him, the number 1 cave on top of the mountain was not attractive at all. Being able to use it as bait to pit Kong Mingming against the other newcomers of Soaring Sky Pavilion was already a good deal. As for the 10 days, it did not matter much. Chapter 39-49. In the end, the interpavilion battle ended hastily. Such an outcome was unexpected, but it was reasonable. After all, not everyone had the heaven-defying strength of Lin Yi, who could easily crush the second and third generation of the Soaring Sky Pavilion without any effort. After that, Lin Yi's actions and Kong Mingming's tragic end, especially the future ownership of the cave abode at the top of the mountain, inevitably became the focus of discussion among the newcomers. Lin Yi did not care about it. He continued to cultivate as usual every day, but in private, he gave Li Xingming an order to find a way to monitor Meng Juiguang's recent actions. Because of their identities, Lin Yi basically had no possibility of fighting Meng Juiguang openly. To nip the threat in the bud, the only way left for him was to take the risk and assassinate Meng Juiguang. The risk of this was obvious. He had to find the perfect opportunity to take action, and he had to hit the target in one strike. If any accident happened, it was very likely to lead to disaster. After all, this was different from the last time he dealt with Nan Tianyong. Last time, he was Lin Er, a rogue cultivator whose background no one could find out. But this time, it was Meng Juiguang. If the law enforcement hall was involved, it was almost certain that he would be found out. Once he was suspected, it would be a piece of cake for the law enforcement hall to find out what was going to happen to him. One could only imagine what would happen to him. Therefore, Lin Yi had to keep his cool. Knowing that time was not in his favor, he had to take out the patience of an assassin and wait for an opportunity. However, to his disappointment, after the interpavilion battle, Li Xingming tried his best to monitor Meng Juiguang for 5 days, but he could not find any opportunity to take action. Basically, Meng Juiguang was not alone outside, and when he was alone, it was often in his own welcoming pavilion territory. None of them were good opportunities. Just when Lin Yi thought that he would have to continue waiting for such a long time and prepare for a protracted battle, a note suddenly appeared at the door of his cave residence. Lin Er, see you at noon today at the 10th mining area. Although there was no signature, the person who wrote this note was undoubtedly Meng Juiguang. Are you finally ready to lay your cards on the table? Lin Yi rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Even if the other party didn't say what the consequences would be if he didn't go, even if he used his toes to think, he could imagine what awaited him when the time came. His identity would definitely be exposed, and he would die a tragic death. After thinking about it carefully for a moment, Lin Yi finally decided to go. This was a choice he had no other choice. After all, the initiative was still in the hands of the other party, and he had no choice but to be led by the nose. Moreover, if he made good use of this opportunity, it might be a rare opportunity. How could Lin Yi miss it so easily? After tidying up his mind and adjusting his state of mind, Lin Yi immediately walked towards Jade's Spirit Hall after making his decision. Although there was still a lot of time before noon, it was not a bad thing to arrive early for this kind of thing. Coming to Jade's Spirit Hall, Lin Yi walked towards the 10th mining area with familiarity. It had been a while since he came here. Although the 3-month period for the first batch of newcomers to sign contracts had passed, this did not mean that they could not come to Jade's Spirit Hall to mine after the expiration. The 3-month period was equivalent to a probation period, and as long as the newcomers performed well during this period, they could freely arrange their time to enter and exit Jade's Spirit Hall to mine. Henceforth, they could freely arrange their time to enter and exit the Spirit Jade Hall to mine. As for those who were tired, they politely declined. Walking in the familiar tunnel of the 10th mining area, Lin Yi could not help but secretly speculate. What was Meng Juiguang's intention of deliberately inviting him to this place? The characteristic of the 10th mining area was that there were few people. Apart from the usual 2 guards, there was no one else in the huge mining area. But so what? After all, the existence of the 2 guards was still a big problem. It was simply unrealistic to want to do something that could not be seen in the light under their eyes. If they attacked the 2 guards, then the matter would be blown out of proportion. At that time, no one would be able to escape responsibility. Or, this was Meng Jueguang's intention. He wanted to find a place with few people to threaten him, but at the same time, he did not dare to find a completely empty place to avoid being killed by him. Lin Yi secretly clenched his fists. No matter what Meng Jueguang was planning, he must put an end to this matter today. Otherwise, if the other really took advantage of him, he would never have a day of peace in the future. Success or failure depended on this one move. Entering the 10th mining area, which he had not seen for a long time, Lin Yi felt as if it was a lifetime ago. Under the eyes of the two guards, he looked around the mining area, but did not find anything unusual. This result was not unexpected. This was a mining area after all, and there were guards watching at all times. Even with Meng Jueguang's connections, it would not be easy for him to do anything here. But even so, this guy still called him here. Did he really think that he could get rid of him just because he had a handle on his identity? Suppressing the doubts in his heart, Lin Yi immediately began to mine as if nothing had happened. Although Meng Jueguang was a big trouble, and he must be eliminated quickly this time. But the more it was so, the more he needed to stabilize his mind. Even if it was purely for the consideration of confusing the enemy, he could not show too much abnormality. Just like that, he waited until noon, and Meng Jueguang's figure finally appeared from the depths of the mining tunnel. As soon as he walked into the 10th mining area, he caught a glimpse of Lin Yi's back from afar. Meng Jueguang's heart was suddenly filled with joy. As long as this guy appeared here, it meant that the fact that he was Lin Yi II was already set in stone. Otherwise, there was no need for him to keep the appointment at all. However, when he looked again, Meng Jueguang could not help but feel a little more doubtful. Lin Yi was mining in full swing at the moment. It did not look like he was here to keep the appointment at all. If it was any other normal person, if their identity was in the hands of someone else, they would not say panic, but at least feel uneasy. At such a critical time, who would be in the mood to mine? Could it be that this guy was pretending? Meng Jueguang could not help but mutter in his heart. But if he wanted to fool me with such a small trick, he was looking down on me too much. Glancing at the two guards next to him, Meng Jueguang immediately walked behind Lin Yi, who was busy mining. He applauded and ridiculed, "Young hero Lin, you are indeed a mining expert who has repeatedly created miracles. Your actions and efficiency, TSK, you can be a model." Chapter 3950. At this point, you still don't give up and still want to continue pretending. Your acting is not bad, but it's a pity that it's all in vain in front of me. Meng Jueguang curled his lips in disdain, then he said with a ferocious face, "I say, are you sick of pretending? Young hero Lin, or should I say, you prefer another name, Lin Air." Lin Yi was still indifferent and continued to mine without saying a word. Although at this point, he couldn't hide anything by remaining silent, but he wanted to see what kind of evidence Meng Jueguang had in his hands. You still think you can continue to deceive everyone? You really won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Fine, I'll be merciful and show you something to destroy this unrealistic fantasy of yours. Meng Jueguang snorted coldly, then he took out something from his arms. It was the spiritual jade that he exchanged from the stall owner in the market last time. Glancing at this spiritual jade that had some flaws, Lin Yi's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. Then he suddenly realized that no wonder Meng Jueguang was so sure. He really found a fatal flaw. For this spiritual jade, because there were some flaws on it, although Lin Yi didn't pay special attention to it, he still had some impression of it. At that time, he didn't pay much attention to it. After all, it was impossible for him to guess that this spiritual jade was personally marked by Meng Jueguang. And after the transaction, the probability of it falling into the hands of the original owner could be said to be very small. Even if such a small probability event really happened, in theory, it wouldn't pose any threat to Lin Yi. But he didn't expect that there would be such a coincidence in the world. Obviously, he had been extremely careful in everything he did, but because of this negligence that couldn't even be called negligence, he was caught by Meng Juiguang. In this regard, Lin Yi could only laugh bitterly in his heart. The affairs of the world are truly unpredictable. Meng Juiguang smiled proudly after noticing Lin Yi's expression. Yo, looks like young hero Lin has finally come to terms with reality. Say, if I give this to the Southern Sky Gate, what will happen if I explain the cause and effect to them? What do you want? Lin Yi finally spoke. Now that things had developed to this point, it was completely impossible to rely on sophistry to get away with it. He could only face it head-on. TSK, what a scary look. Young hero Lin is a cornered dog that will do something desperate. Are you planning to kill me to silence me? Meng Juiguang pretended to be alarmed and patted his chest. With an unpredictable tone, he said, speaking of which, young hero Lin is really an amazing person. As a newcomer from the secular world, you have such powerful strength. So powerful that you can even kill a peak late-stage foundation establishment expert like Nan Tianyong. I, Meng Juiguang, am probably just a reckless clown in your eyes, right? Although these words were said in a strange tone. But in reality, after discovering Lin Yi's identity, Meng Juiguang was indeed frightened to the point that his hair stood on end. He was literally drenched in cold sweat. No matter what, the fact that Lin Yi was able to kill Nan Tianyong was simply too shocking. It was simply too horrifying. Even a peak late stage of the Foundation establishment realm could be killed in one move. Didn't that mean that Meng Juiguang, a mere mid-stage of the Foundation establishment realm, wasn't even worthy of Lin Yi's attention? He had always thought that Lin Yi was just a so-so. Even if he could repeatedly defeat Meng Tong and even Murong Zhen, he was still in the category of newcomers. If he could fight personally, even if there were 100 Lin Yi, he would have long been dead. Now that he thought about it, the idea was laughable. It was fortunate that Lin Yi didn't have the chance to fight him. Otherwise, with all the things he'd done before, if he'd given Lin Yi even the slightest chance, Lin Yi would have been dead by now. Do you really want to kill me in one move? So that you can avoid future troubles? Meng Juiguang's face was full of ridicule. He pointed at the two guards in the distance with his mouth and sneered fearlessly. Unfortunately, although this place is a dead mining area, the number of guards is never less than 2. Even if I'm not your opponent, can you deal with these 2 guards at the same time? Besides, even if you can kill these 2 guards at the same time, do you have the confidence to escape the joint pursuit of Spirit Jade Hall and Law Enforcement Hall, young hero Lin? Hearing this, Lin Yi smiled noncommittally and shook his head. So much nonsense and beating around the bush. Are you really that afraid of me, senior brother Meng? Afraid? Of course I'm afraid. I'm scared to death of you right now. Meng Juiguang deliberately put on an expression of extreme fear. Then his expression changed again. He picked up the spiritual jade that was used to threaten Lin Yi and snorted coldly. But young hero Lin, there's one thing I advise you not to misunderstand. I'm not afraid that you'll kill me, but I'm afraid that you won't be able to give me what I want and force me to look for Southern Heavenly Gate. That would be too disappointing, wouldn't it? Sure enough, a troublesome fellow. Lin Yi lightly exhaled and said indifferently, Tell me, what is it that you want? Not bad, not bad. Looks like young hero Lin is quite sensible. This is for the best. Otherwise, it won't look good on everyone's faces. What I want is very simple. I believe young hero Lin will definitely satisfy me, right? Humph. Meng Juiguang once again tossed the spiritual jade in his hand. You want spiritual jade? How much? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. If Meng Juiguang's appetite was limited to spiritual jade, then it wouldn't be a problem. He could get some spiritual jade to temporarily calm Meng Juiguang down and then find a chance to get rid of him. That would be a good plan. Unexpectedly, Meng Juiguang suddenly burst out laughing. Seeing that he had attracted the attention of the two guards, he lowered his voice again and said, "You dare to ask me how much I want? Young hero Lin, are you joking? If a pile of gold or a chicken that lays golden eggs were placed in front of you, which would you choose?" I see. Lin Yi finally understood. As expected, with Meng Juiguang's greedy nature, he wouldn't be satisfied with a mere spiritual jade. This guy could deduce that Lin Yi had a way to recharge the jade, so it wasn't surprising that he had his eyes on it. A chicken that lays golden eggs. What do you mean? Lin Yi pretended to be confused. No matter what, there was no way he would let anyone know about the space in the jade pendant, which was related to his life. I just praised you for being sensible, and now you're pretending. Young hero Lin, is it really okay for you to not cooperate? My temper may not be as good as you think. If you make me unhappy, I might sell you out to the Southern Sky Gate. I'm sure they won't mistreat me. What do you say, young hero Lin? Meng Juiguang threatened with an unfriendly expression. Chapter 3951. Meng Juiguang, who originally had the absolute initiative and was confident that he could toy with Lin Yi in the palm of his hand, was stunned by Lin Yi's gaze. He subconsciously took a step back in fright. After a moment, Meng Juiguang came to his senses and said with a cold expression, "It's useless to quibble. The ironclad evidence is right here. You must have a way to quickly recharge the waste jade. You only have two choices now. One is to tell me about it. This is good for both of us. As for the second, I don't think I need to explain the consequences when the time comes." Lin Yi was silent for a moment, then finally opened his mouth and said, "Do you really want to know about the method to recharge waste jade into good jade?" Nonsense. If it wasn't for this, do you think you would still be alive today? These people from the Southern Heavenly Gate would have gotten rid of you long ago, young hero Lin. Meng Juiguang sneered. Fine, I can tell you about this. But after that, how can I guarantee that you won't kill me after I've outlived my usefulness? Lin Yi said in an unpredictable tone. From his point of view, it was normal for him to not trust Meng Juiguang. Meng Juiguang was not surprised at all. He immediately sneered and said, "Young hero Lin, I thought you were very smart. I didn't expect that when it comes to the critical moment, you're no different from a stupid ordinary person. Just think about it. If I expose you, I won't be able to keep this secret. What good would that do me? With such a heaven-defying method, of course, I should leave one person alive to make a fortune." These words were not empty words. Looking at the entire Heavenly Stage Island, although many forces had mastered the method to recharge waste jade, they were all similar to the spirit jade hole. They needed to spend hundreds of years to do so. In contrast, if Lin Yi really had mastered the method to quickly recharge waste jade, then the degree of heaven-defying would be absolutely shocking. Even if it was for his own benefit, Meng Juiguang would never let a third person know. After all, to him, that was 100 disadvantages. There was no advantage to it. All right, as long as you understand. Lin Yi nodded. He then pointed at the two guards in the distance and said indifferently, "What about those two? Don't you need to think of a way to get rid of them? If they accidentally hear or see us, it will be very bad." Meng Juiguang was stunned, but he quickly understood Lin Yi's intentions. He snorted and said, "Young hero Lin, I advise you not to waste your efforts. You want to send those two guards away and then take the opportunity to attack me. What wishful thinking." Meng Juiguang was not an idiot. In this kind of situation, what he needed to avoid the most was to be alone with Lin Yi. Based on the difference in their strength, if Lin Yi wanted to kill him, it would be no different from killing a chicken. After all, he was a ferocious character who could even kill an expert at the peak of the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm in a second. At this distance, as long as I keep my voice down, they won't be able to hear me. I will specially release a Jinchi barrier to block them off. Moreover, if my guess is not wrong, your secret to quickly recharging waste jades should be hidden in mine number 10. You've done it so many times under their noses without being discovered, so there shouldn't be any problems now. So don't try to play any tricks. Do you understand what I mean, young hero Lin? Meng Jueguang warned with an unfriendly expression. Little did he know that his speculation and threat, which he thought was smart, provided Lin Yi with ideas and clues. Without his words, it would have been very troublesome to fabricate a decent lie. However, now that he had Meng Jueguang's presumptuous speculation as a reference, it would be much easier to deceive him. Lin Yi's eyes lit up when he heard that. His mind raced. If that was the case, it might be a rare opportunity if he made good use of it. Well, since it has come to this, I won't hide it anymore. You guessed it right. The secret to turning waste jades into good jades lies in my number 10. It's also because of this that I was able to dig up good jades here. Lin Yi's expression was mixed with a trace of helplessness. The more helpless Lin Yi was, the happier Meng Jueguang felt. He would not be on guard, and the easier it was for the lie to come true in his eyes. It's just as I expected. No wonder in this dead mining area, no one, including us, can dig up good jades, but only you can. I said there must be something fishy about it. Meng Jueguang's face was full of foresight. In retrospect, because Lin Yi kept digging up good jades here, he and Meng Tong had racked their brains and wasted a lot of energy in this place. In the end, they were still rebuffed and finally had to give up. However, according to what Lin Yi said, if they had persisted for a while, they might have found out the secret long ago. They wouldn't have waited until now. Meng Jueguang secretly regretted it for a while. Then, he impatiently urged, "Tell me, what is the secret?" The secret is very simple. In this dead mining area number 10, there is a super spiritual eye. The concentration of spiritual qi is beyond imagination. Any piece of waste jade can be quickly charged up in a short period of time and become a good jade with abundant spiritual qi. Lin Yi organized his story in a short period of time. Super spiritual eye. Although Meng Jueguang had guessed it long ago, he still felt it was a little unbelievable after hearing Lin Yi's words. He said in disbelief, "Is this really possible? Even if something like the super spiritual eye really exists, why would it appear in this dead mining area? Then why is there only waste jade here, and not a single good jade can be dug out?" Lin Yi shook his head and said indifferently, "Don't misunderstand. The super spiritual eye that I'm talking about doesn't always exist. It only appears at certain times. Moreover, it moves. It could be here one moment, but the next moment, it could escape to some unknown place. It could even disappear. It's not impossible. So troublesome." Meng Jueguang couldn't help but frown. Lin Yi's story sounded unimaginable at first. However, when he thought about it carefully, it was quite plausible. Even an astute person like him wouldn't be able to tell that it was fake in a short period of time. However, this situation was a little different from what he had expected. The super spiritual eye was very small, and it could change and move at any time. This meant that there were various restrictions when it came to operating it. It was slightly unrealistic to want to use it to quickly fish out a large amount of spiritual jades. However, even if the operation was a little complicated and troublesome, as long as he could quickly turn waste jade into good jade, then it wouldn't be a big problem. In the end, there was still a way to make a fortune. At most, it would just take a little more time. Chapter 3952. About this, because the range of the super spiritual eye is very small, I can only find it if I use my chi to sense it. I'll say the ugly words first, this still depends on luck. As he spoke, Lin Yi looked at Meng Jueguang indifferently, without any signs of lying. Depends on luck. What you're saying is, if I can't find the super spiritual eye, then it's my bad luck, and it has nothing to do with you. Meng Jueguang laughed coldly, and said with a sinister face, "What a pity, young hero Lin, your little tricks are useless in front of me. I have to tell you a piece of bad news, you have to find the super spiritual eye by today, or else what?" Lin Yi asked indifferently. "Then you can only blame your bad luck. At that time, I will have a reason to think that the super spiritual eye is a lie you made up to fool me, and the consequences will be very serious. What do you say, young hero Lin?" Meng Jueguang threatened with a sinister smile. On this point, Meng Jueguang was still very clever. Before seeing the actual results, if Lin Yi thought that he could get away with a lie he made up at the last minute, then he would be gravely mistaken. For this kind of thing, one would not release the eagle without seeing the rabbit. That was the logic and awareness that a smart person should have. Okay. Lin Yi looked deeply at Meng Jueguang, and then stopped mining. He placed his hand on the stone wall, and then continuously poured qi into it. Seeing this, Meng Jueguang could not help but believe it a little. This action was very similar to what Lin Yi said, using qi to search for the super spiritual eye. However, this kind of stupid method, even without trying it, could be seen that it was very strenuous. Luckily, there was Lin Yi, this free labor. Meng Jueguang felt that if he were to do it himself, not to mention whether or not he could successfully find the super spiritual eye, he would definitely waste all his qi. He was not like Lin Yi who could replenish his true qi at any time. If he used up all his true qi, he did not know how long it would take to recover it. Just thinking about it made him feel bitter. Seeing Lin Yi's hand on the stone wall for a long time without any movement, Meng Jueguang could not help but frown and say, "Hey, can you do it or not? Don't think that you can bluff your way out of this. If you can't find the super spiritual eye, I guarantee that you will die a miserable death." Lin Yi turned his head to look at him, and said indifferently, "Although the concentration of the spiritual qi in the super spirit eye is very obvious, the range is extremely small, and the changes are rapid. Even I would find it hard to find it in a short period of time. If you don't even have this bit of patience, you should give up as soon as possible." After saying that, Lin Yi turned around and moved to another place, continuing his previous actions. "TSK, you have a way with words. But it's fine, haste makes waste. Anyway, I will only give you half a day's time. If you still can't find the super spiritual eye by the end of the day, you can just wait to die a miserable death." Meng Jueguang said with a sinister smile, and then no longer said anything. He just stood behind Lin Yi and looked at him coldly. Lin Yi could not help but secretly smile when he heard that. "Still want to wait until the end of the day? Don't worry, you won't be able to live until then." The two guards looked at Lin Yi and Meng Jueguang's strange actions from afar, and could not help but look at each other in dismay. Coming to this kind of place and not mining, but randomly touching the stone wall, what kind of situation was this? If it was someone else who was so lazy, the two guards would have already stepped forward to reprimand him. But this time, they chose to turn a blind eye. After all, Meng Jueguang had always been popular in the Spirit Jade Hall, and the two of them were just ordinary guards. There was no need to offend Meng Jueguang for such a small matter and find trouble for themselves. Moreover, Lin Yi had worked here for more than 3 months, and had a good relationship with them. Naturally, they would not come forward to make things difficult for them. The two guards turned a blind eye, and Lin Yi and Meng Jueguang were also happy to do so. For the two of them, it was the best that the two guards could be so tactful and not cause trouble. Time passed by bit, and a full 6 hours had passed from noon. The sky outside was getting dark, and the time to end the day was getting closer and closer. At this time, Lin Yi had almost walked around the entire 10th mining area. There were already more than 20 places where he had stopped. To be precise, there were 22. Hey, I have to remind you that the work is going to end soon. Although I personally do not like this result, but it seems that we are destined not to cooperate well. This is the will of heaven. Meng Jueguang said with a face of impatience. After holding back for a whole afternoon, his patience had been completely worn out. Lin Yi still silently put his hand on the stone wall, and continued to instill genuine qi. This was the 23rd, and also the last one in his plan. To be honest, for a newcomer like you who is so excellent that it is almost legendary, I originally wanted to take this opportunity to cooperate with you from now on. It is really a pity. Meng Jueguang suddenly sighed. What he said was indeed from the bottom of his heart. After all, he was about to be promoted to the position of 3rd Pavilion Master, but he did not even have a capable subordinate. If this were to spread, it would be too shameful. Although Meng Tong had been reborn after taking the Meridian Heart-Shattering Pill, and seemed to have become slightly more reliable compared to the helpless Ah Do in the past, it was a pity that he was still far from being a match for Lin Yi. Now, he was beaten half to death and could not get out of bed. As for Murongjin, compared to Meng Tong, she was indeed much more reliable, but this woman was very scheming. Even if she slept with him, she would not be of the same mind as Meng Jueguang. She was like a poisonous snake, who could show its ferocious fangs at any time. Neither of these two people were people that Meng Jueguang could truly rely on. Now that he had this perfect opportunity, if he could subdue Lin Yi, it would be ideal for him. Not to mention that his strength was far above those two people, because he had a fatal weakness in his hands, he did not have to worry about his loyalty. He was practically a puppet that was tailor-made for Meng Jueguang. The stronger Lin Yi was, the happier he would be. Unfortunately, compared to a puppet subordinate, Meng Jueguang cared more about spiritual jades. If Lin Yi could not truthfully reveal the secret of how waste jades could quickly become good jades, then he could only choose to kill him. Hearing this, Lin Yi retracted his hand. Everything was ready. He smiled playfully and said, "Is that so? That's a pity. If you had said so earlier, you might have had a slight chance to keep your life." What? Meng Jueguang was instantly stunned. From Lin Yi's strange words, he felt an unusual sense of danger. Chapter 3953. Nothing. Lin Yi shook his head lightly, then squinted his eyes and said, "If you have any last words, senior brother Meng can stay. Although you and I are not the same kind of people, no matter what, we are still brothers in the same pavilion. I can still help you with this little bit of help." What the fuck are you talking about? Meng Jueguang suddenly felt guilty. Even if he held Lin Yi's fatal weakness in his hands, because of the difference in strength, the weak would naturally be afraid of the strong. This was innate and inevitable. Strictly speaking, he, Meng Jueguang and Lin Yi were both masters in the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm, so it was not certain that he would not have the power to fight. It was a pity that Lin Yi once had the magnificent feat of killing Nan Tianyong, a master at the peak of the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. In the eyes of any normal person, including Meng Jueguang himself, they would not think that they could fight with such an abnormal monster. It was no different from sending themselves to death. The intention of Lin Yi's words could not be more obvious. Feeling the waves of killing intent emitted from his body, Meng Juiguang could not help but feel creeped out. He said in horror, "You actually want to kill me? Are you crazy? You actually want to kill me in such a place? Do you think you don't have to die?" Meng Juiguang had already considered the possibility of Lin Yi taking the risk to kill him, but in his opinion, this possibility was very small. Lin Yi was such a promising and intelligent newcomer. As long as he was not forced into a dead end, as long as there was a chance of turning around, he would never take the risk. Although there were few people on this occasion, there were still 2 guards watching from a distance. If Lin Yi dared to make a move, it would be equivalent to smashing a jar. No matter whether he could successfully kill Meng Juiguang or not, at least he would definitely die, and it would definitely be a very tragic death. No matter how strong Lin Yi was, he was just a newcomer. In front of leviathans like the Law Enforcement Hall and Spirit Jade Hall, as well as the 3 great pavilions, it was not worth mentioning at all. However, Lin Yi smiled indifferently. He turned around and said, "Under normal circumstances, it is indeed not convenient to kill you, but if you died in a mine accident, there should be no problem." Mine disaster. Meng Juiguang was startled, but before he could react, Lin Yi was already walking towards the tunnel of the mining area with the spiritual jade basket in his hand, looking like he was ready to hand over the work. In an instant, Meng Juiguang was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. If what Lin Yi said was true, that he was not killed by Lin Yi, but died in a mine accident, then even if he died, it would be in vain, and no one would associate it with Lin Yi. However, immediately, Meng Juiguang suddenly laughed hysterically, pointing at Lin Yi's back and mocking, "Your wish is very wonderful, but unfortunately, a mine accident will not happen for hundreds of years. Placing your hope on such an unrealistic thing, should I say that young hero Lin is stupid, or have you reached a dead end? Mine accidents may be very common in the secular world. But in this Heaven Stage Island, especially in the mining area directly under the jurisdiction of the 3 great pavilions, Spirit Jade Hall, under the careful protection of all kinds of formations, the probability of a mine accident was as small as Meng Juiguang said. In fact, in the past 100 years, there was no record of any mine accident under the jurisdiction of Spirit Jade Hall. Generally speaking, because every mining area was guarded, if there was even a little bit of abnormality, it would be discovered and repaired very quickly. The Spirit Jade Hall attached great importance to this matter. And taking a step back, even if a mine accident really did happen, if it was of a normal degree, for a master in the middle stage of the foundational level like Meng Juiguang, it would not be life-threatening. Unless it was a legendary nightmarish mine collapse. Of course, something like a mine collapse might not even happen once in 1,000 years, so there was no need to consider it. Therefore, after being scared out of his wits, Meng Juiguang quickly regained his composure. A mine accident was simply nonsense. Hearing this, Lin Yi's footsteps paused, and he looked back at him, desperate. "After all, you know too much. If I don't bury you here today, it will be very troublesome for me." Meng Juiguang was startled. Just as he was about to open his mouth to ridicule, his face suddenly changed. In the cave wall behind him, suddenly began to tremble violently, and then a crack appeared. A trace of domineering qi emerged from it. How is this possible? What the hell is this guy doing? Meng Juiguang was suddenly horrified. Before, he could still listen to the mine accident mentioned by Lin Yi as a joke, but now even cracks began to appear on the heavily guarded cave wall. The mine accident had become a reality. After realizing that something was wrong, Meng Juiguang did not hesitate to turn around and run. Although with his strength in the middle stage of the foundational level, he had the confidence to deal with a normal mine accident, but if there was a chance, it was better to run away quickly. What's more, no matter how unbelievable it was, this mining disaster was most likely Lin Yi's doing. This was something that could be figured out even with his toes. If he let his guard down, he might fail miserably in an easy task. Meng Juiguang's reaction was extremely fast. However, before he could run more than a few steps, the cave wall behind him suddenly exploded. At the same time, the other 22 points that Lin Yi had checked exploded at the same time. Boom! The layers of protective formations in the mine collapsed in an instant, and the huge mine number 10 suddenly collapsed. Countless pieces of rubble, some of which were even mixed with a lot of spirit jades, were sent flying everywhere. Even the roof of the cave began to collapse with a loud rumble. It was a horrifying scene of doomsday. As expected, 23 true chi bombs exploding at the same time is enough to create a man-made mine accident. Lin Yi looked back at the scene and nodded to himself. In the afternoon, for more than 6 hours, under the name of investigating the super spiritual eyes, he had planted 23 true chi bombs in the cave wall under Meng Juiguang's nose. As long as he controlled them to explode at the same time, it was possible to create a man-made mine accident, and then he could bury Meng Juiguang here. This was Lin Yi's plan. He did not know how much power was needed to penetrate the various protective formations here, so he spent so much time and exerted the power he could control to the limit. Chapter 3954. This was the best opportunity to bury Meng Juiguang, and it was also the only opportunity. Once it failed, there would not be such an opportunity in the future. Meng Juiguang would definitely contact the Southern Sky Gate in desperation, and the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, in order to ensure that nothing went wrong this time, Lin Yi had to go all out. If possible, let alone 23 vital chi bombs, even 230 vital chi bombs would not be a problem. However, judging from the current situation, the power of the 23 vital chi bombs had not only successfully triggered the expected mine disaster, but it was also more than enough. It could even be said that the power was too much, far beyond Lin Yi's imagination. In the midst of the chaos, Lin Yi suddenly noticed a piece of spiritual jade bursting out from the side, forcibly penetrating the 5-meter-thick stone pillar of the mine. Its terrifying penetrative power and lethality really made one's scalp tingle. The spiritual jade was very hard, far harder than ordinary rocks. It might not be a problem in normal times, but at this moment, it was undoubtedly a deadly weapon. The spirit chi in the mining area was rich to begin with. Even in the number 10 dead mining area, there were countless spiritual jades buried deep behind the stone walls, so there was no doubt that the spirit chi was also rich. In this enclosed space with rich spirit chi, it was simply a natural super-large spirit chi bomb. Judging from the signs, under the guidance of Lin Yi's 23 vital chi bombs, this super-large spiritual chi bomb was already showing signs of exploding. Once it really developed to this stage, the spiritual chi in the mine would explode, and after obtaining unparalleled speed, together with its hardness and penetrative power, then every piece of spiritual jade here would be a great killing weapon. Even a golden core stage expert would not be able to escape unscathed. Lin Yi was suddenly shocked. He had no time to think further. Out of a subconscious self-protection reaction, he directly spurted vital chi from his whole body, and with an astonishing speed that exceeded his limit. His body shot toward the tunnel of the mining area like a cannonball. At this moment, Meng Juiguang was also struggling with all his might. However, because his position was much closer to the cave wall than Lin Yi's and his speed was much slower than Lin Yi's, he was swallowed by the rubble in the blink of an eye. According to Lin Yi's original plan, the power of the mine disaster alone might not be enough to bury Meng Juiguang, so the mine disaster was just a pretext. He intended to take advantage of the chaos to kill Meng Juiguang. Anyway, there were only 2 guards, and he only needed to act fast enough in the chaos. It was not difficult to do this without anyone noticing. However, there was no longer a need for that. Judging from the current situation, if he did not flee with all his might, even Lin Yi would be buried here. Ever since the first spiritual jade was shot, the situation had gone far beyond his control. Damn it! I still have to take over as the third pavilion master. How can I die in such a godforsaken place? In the rubble, Meng Juiguang's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. His whole body was drenched in blood. He roared and desperately tried to chase after Lin Yi. Unfortunately, before he could finish his words, a piece of spiritual jade suddenly penetrated his chest from behind and pierced through his heart without any suspense. In an instant, Meng Juiguang had no heartbeat. To be precise, he had no heart. Immediately afterward, countless rubble, mixed with the daunting spiritual jades, whistled through his body from various parts. Meng Juiguang was instantly torn into pieces, and he could not be more dead. With his identity as the eldest senior brother in charge of the new disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion, he was able to weave a huge network of connections and even forced away the third pavilion master, Lu Bianren, and replaced him. Meng Juiguang, who was omnipotent in the eyes of the new disciples, died a violent death. He had worked so hard for so long, and the thing that he dreamed of was within his reach, but in the end, he could not take over the position of the third pavilion master. Meng Juiguang, who was engulfed by the rubble, could not close his eyes in the end. His blank and lifeless eyes were filled with resentment and unwillingness, and he died with everlasting regret. Phew! Lin Yi noticed this scene from the corner of his eye, and he immediately let out a long breath. Although things had progressed beyond his expectations, as long as he could successfully bury Meng Juiguang here, everything would be fine. After all, this guy knew about the flaw in his identity, and he had solid evidence in his hands. The threat was too great, and he had to die. However, just when Lin Yi slightly relaxed, a huge force came from behind him. Even though he was wrapped in a super strong protective chi, he could not help but spit out a big mouthful of blood under the huge force. Lin Yi glanced behind him, and he felt lucky. This time, he was hit by a stone slab. If it was a more penetrating stone, or a more terrifying spiritual jades, he would have been half crippled even if he did not die. Although the impact of the stone slab had caused Lin Yi to suffer serious injuries, there was one good thing about it. It increased his escape speed, and at the same time, he had an additional protective shield behind him. At least, it could block a lot of the stone slab attacks, and he would not be seriously injured again. Mine collapse. It can't be. It was not until this moment that the two guards not far from the entrance of the mining area realized that the situation was not good, and both of them looked horrified. The two of them were so scared that their faces turned pale. They could only watch helplessly as the stream of rocks mixed with spiritual jade bombs came closer and closer. They knew that they would die if they continued to stay here, but their legs seemed to be filled with lead and didn't listen to them at all. Seeing that the two were about to be swallowed by the mine collapse, a figure suddenly hit them, and the three of them rolled into the mine tunnel, narrowly escaping the disaster. At the same time, the other mining areas were also rumbling. Although there was not a large-scale mine collapse like the number 10 mining area, there were also constant stones falling from the top of the mine, which was the precursor of a linked mine disaster. For a time, all the mining areas were panicking. In the face of a mine disaster, even the powerful cultivators might not be able to guarantee that they could escape unscathed. Although there were not many mine disasters in history, the number of people who died each time was not small. No one was willing to be the unlucky soul of a mine disaster. With a burst of panic and exclamations, everyone hurriedly fled. The entire Lingyu Hall was in a great panic. This day was destined to be recorded in the history books. Not only Lingyu Hall, but the entire 3 pavilions were alarmed. A mine disaster of a general degree was already very rare. As for a mine collapse of such a degree, it was even more rare to encounter in 1,000 years. It was impossible for the three pavilions not to be shocked. After the accident, the Elders' Council responded at the first time. They specifically sent an elder to Lingyu Hall and ordered Lingyu Hall to assist them in dealing with the aftermath. At the same time, the Law Enforcement Hall also immediately intervened to investigate the cause of the incident. Chapter 3955. Judging from the severity, it could be confirmed that this was a mine collapse that happened once in 1,000 years. However, because the initial mine collapse point was the number 10 dead mining area, only a few pieces of spiritual jade could be contributed in a year. Although the other mining areas were also affected, it was not a big problem. As long as the protection was reinforced, mining could be carried out as usual. Therefore, the loss of spiritual jade caused by the mine collapse could be said to be negligible. As for the casualties, the final statistics were also very small, only 1 dead and 13 injured. The one who died was naturally Meng Juiguang. In addition to Lin Yi and the 2 guards of the number 10 mining area, there were also 10 people injured in the other mining areas. Most of them were caused by fighting during the escape. But even so, this mine collapse was still taken seriously. After all, the one who died was Meng Juiguang. The appointment letter of the 3rd Pavilion Master of the Welcome Pavilion had already been drafted. Without a doubt, he had already entered the ranks of the top management of the Welcome Pavilion. He could be regarded as the martyr of the highest level in all the previous mine collapses of Spirit Jade Hall. At the level of Meng Juiguang, there was no need to mine personally. Even the number of times he went into the mine was not too many. He did not need to be in the front line. Naturally, he would not appear in the list of martyrs. Only this time, Meng Juiguang was the only exception. The death of Meng Juiguang immediately caused a sensation in all directions. Needless to say, the Welcome Pavilion. After the news came, from the Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng to the ordinary Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers, everyone was shocked and in a mess. In the Welcome Pavilion, the death of Meng Juiguang was almost no less than a reshuffle of power. Both were in the position of the 3rd Pavilion Master. However, the death of Meng Juiguang and the departure of Liu Bianren were 2 completely different concepts. As the previous 3rd Pavilion Master, Liu Bianren's departure was not a big change to the Welcoming Pavilion. That was because Meng Juiguang had long since locked onto the position of the successor. This fat piece of meat that was in his mouth could not be taken away by anyone. Therefore, Liu Bianren's departure would not cause much chaos. However, Meng Juiguang was different. He was just about to take over. He didn't even get the letter of appointment from the 3rd Pavilion Master. His death was very sudden. It almost wiped out an unexpected blank space in the power hierarchy of the Welcoming Pavilion. Without a doubt, this was definitely a juicy piece of meat, but it was suddenly thrown in front of everyone when no one was mentally prepared. Chaos was inevitable when a group of dogs fought for food. Apart from that, the position left vacant by Meng Juiguang's death was not only that of the 3rd Pavilion Master of the Welcoming Pavilion, but also that of the eldest senior brother in charge of the newcomers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. For a time, it could be said that the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion were in a state of panic. Those with strength and skill would naturally want to take the opportunity to rise to the next level. Even if they could not extravagantly ask for the position of Welcoming Pavilion's 3rd Pavilion Master, they were still the eldest senior brother who managed the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion. This position, which was not eye-catching but was extremely important, was also coveted by many. However, most of the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion did not consider this problem. They did not have the strength to compete with others. The only thing they wanted to do now was to protect themselves. Originally, when Meng Juiguang was still alive, there was no problem for them to rely on him, even under Lin Yi's strong performance. Meng Juiguang's side was at a passive disadvantage, but it was not a big problem. After all, the arm could not twist the thigh. As long as Meng Juiguang took the position of the third pavilion master, everything would be fine. However, now that their backer, Meng Juiguang, had collapsed along with the mine collapse, what to do next was a big problem that concerned their future and even life and death. If they did not make a wise choice as soon as possible, it was hard to guarantee that Lin Yi would not make a move on them. When that time came, even if they were to hide like a tortoise, just simply ostracizing them would be enough to make them suffer. However, no matter what they thought in their hearts and what choice they made, they now had to depend on the mood of one person. This person was naturally Lin Yi. Previously, when Meng Juiguang was still alive, he had been pressured by Lin Yi to the point of retreating step by step. Now that Meng Juiguang was dead, Lin Yi's side was the dominant one. This had become an unavoidable reality. No matter what Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples wanted to do, they couldn't avoid Lin Yi, this big mountain. Therefore, they had to open their eyes and see clearly what Lin Yi's attitude was. Unfortunately, they could not come into contact with Lin Yi at all, because Lin Yi was currently being investigated by the Law Enforcement Hall. In the Law Enforcement Hall's interrogation room, Lin Yi looked at the Law Enforcement Hall expert in front of him and silently shook his head. The saying enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road was indeed true. The person in charge of the interrogation was surprisingly a familiar face, Ma Jian. Lin Yi could still clearly remember that although Ma Jian belonged to the Law Enforcement Hall, he was actually part of Su Lingchong's faction. In the previous newcomer assessment, he had secretly made a move against Lin Yi. Fortunately, Lin Yi's trump card was deep, so he could calmly deal with it. If it was any other newcomer, it was not impossible for them to die under this person's schemes. Strictly speaking, he did not know this Ma Jian, nor did he have any enmity with him in the past. There was no conflict between them. It was only because of his relationship with Su Lingchong that they walked on the opposite side. This time, it was probably no exception. Name, identity, tell me truthfully. Ma Jian casually crossed his legs as he sized up Lin Yi with a glance and sneered. Just as Lin Yi had expected, he had indeed received Su Lingchong's instructions this time. Not only was he to make things difficult for Lin Yi, if possible, he was to push all the blame onto Lin Yi and seize the opportunity to get rid of him. Meng Juiguang's death was an enormous loss to Su Lingchong, this young master. Meng Juiguang's ability had already obtained Su Lingchong's acknowledgement and was gradually brought into his inner circle, so he would be of great use in the future. Otherwise, it would be utterly impossible for Su Lingchong to give a large amount of cultivation resources and various rare medicinal pills to Meng Juiguang, and it was even to the extent that he specially asked his grandfather, Su Yuanjing, to stand out and fight for the position of third pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion for him. In the future plans of this young master, Su Lingchong, Meng Juiguang was an existence that was similar to his right and left hand. Now that Meng Juiguang was dead, it was simply like cutting off an arm to him. Not only did it break his future wings, it caused all his previous investments to go down the drain at the same time. But the fortunate thing amidst the misfortune was that when the mine collapse occurred, Lin Yi and Meng Juiguang were at the same place. Moreover, they were at the starting point of the mine collapse. No matter what the exact inside story was, this gave Su Lingchong the opportunity to make a big fuss. Chapter 3956. Lin Yi looked at him and said lightly, "Lin Yi, a newcomer to Blue Cloud Pavilion. Where were you when the mine collapsed?" Ma Jian continued to ask with a cold face. "Mine number 10. Lin Yi answered. "Very good. Then at the time of the incident, were you with Meng Juiguang?" Ma Jian asked with a deeper meaning. "That's right." Lin Yi nodded immediately. This was something that the two guards had seen, so there was no way to hide it. In fact, there was really nothing to hide. "It's good that you admit it," Ma Jian smiled darkly and then asked, "Do you have any explanation for the sudden collapse of the mine?" "As far as I know, mine number 10 happened to be the source of the mine collapse, which means that the people closest to the mine collapse were only you and Meng Jueguang." Lin Yi shook his head lightly and replied, "I'm sorry, I'm not a professional. I have no clue as to why the mine collapse happened. It's useless no matter how close I was at the time." "No clue." Ma Jian glanced at Lin Yi mockingly and said with certainty, "Then I'll reluctantly tell you. According to the professionals of Spirit Jade Hall, the direct cause of the mine collapse was the explosion of spiritual energy. However, with the density and activity of spiritual energy in mine number 10, not to mention an explosion, even the lowest level of protection array would not be able to destroy it. The only explanation for this abnormality is that someone tampered with it, which ultimately led to the explosion of spiritual energy." Lin Yi didn't say anything, but he couldn't help but feel a slight fluctuation in his heart. Although he didn't know whether it was true or not, at least Ma Jian's words sounded quite reasonable. If this was really the case, the plan to use the mine collapse to bury Meng Jueguang seemed to be a great success, but it couldn't be said to be perfect. At least there was a trace of flaw. "Oh. It seems like I've hit the nail on the head, right?" Ma Jian's eyes lit up, and he immediately smiled proudly. Then, he changed the topic again. "You and Meng Jueguang don't get along. This is no secret in the Welcome Pavilion, and at the time of the incident, the two of you happened to be together. Moreover, it was in the deserted 10th mining area. This really makes me very curious. Tell me, what were you two doing at that time?" "Mining," Lin Yi replied without batting an eyelid. "Mining?" Ma Jian was stunned for a moment, and then the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curve into a mocking smile. "Lin Yi, I seem to have forgotten to tell you in advance that joking is a taboo in our law enforcement hall, especially for a suspect like you. You will die very miserably." Mining in the mining area was the most standard answer, but it also depended on who it was. A person of Meng Jueguang's level actually went to the mining area personally, and he even did it in the godforsaken 10th mining area. If this wasn't a joke, then what was? "Sir, you seem to have misunderstood something. I was indeed mining at that time, but I didn't say that it also included Meng Jueguang," Lin Yi said lightly. "Then what was Meng Jueguang doing at that time? Don't tell me that you two were having a friendly conversation, or that he was cheering you on," Ma Jian said with a mocking expression. Lin Yi looked at him, and his expression was as calm as an ancient well. He said, "He was threatening me, saying that he was going to be promoted to the 3rd pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion, so he wanted to force me to be his subordinate. Otherwise, he would remove senior brother Ku and replace him with Murongzhen and Meng Tong as the new managers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, so that we would never be able to make a name for ourselves." "Oh. If that's the case, then the atmosphere at that time wasn't very good. Any normal person wouldn't swallow such a threat, let alone you, the famous number 1 newcomer of the Welcome Pavilion. I heard that Meng Jueguang couldn't suppress you before, so it's obvious that he wouldn't be able to subdue you with just a few words this time. Am I right?" Ma Jian smiled evilly without a trace. "What are you trying to say?" Lin Yi narrowed his eyes. At this point, Ma Jian should finally reveal his true intentions. As expected, Ma Jian immediately said with evil intentions, "Can I speculate that because Meng Jueguang forced you, you held a grudge against him, or perhaps you wanted to eliminate the threat, so you secretly destroyed the 10th mining area's protective formation, causing a spiritual energy explosion, and used the collapse of the mine to kill Meng Jueguang?" "Paw! Paw! Paw!" Hearing this, Lin Yi smiled faintly and clapped a few times. Then, he said unhurriedly, "Your imagination is not bad, but to blame a mine collapse that only happens once in 1,000 years on a newcomer of my district, isn't this speculation a little too bold? Moreover, I remember that the law enforcement hall only looks at evidence. If you can't produce any evidence, then can I take your words as slander and report it to the higher-ups of the law enforcement hall? You want evidence? Ma Jian suddenly smiled sinisterly. Then I'll give you evidence. Although there weren't many people in the 10th mining area, you probably forgot one thing. At that time, besides you and Meng Juiguang, there were 2 other guards in the mining area who witnessed everything. They personally confessed that before the mine collapse, you were wandering around the 10th mining area abnormally and didn't mine properly at all. Needless to say, this was your preparation to cause the mine collapse. Isn't this evidence enough? Lin Yi immediately became silent. Although everything that Ma Jian said and speculated was undoubtedly because he was instructed by Su Lingqiong to mess with him, it was precisely because of this that he accidentally locked onto the murderer in advance. No matter how far-fetched such speculations and so-called evidence seemed to be, in the end, it could almost be equivalent to the truth. Until now, Ma Jian himself still didn't realize that his racking his brains to frame Lin Yi was actually the truth. A deeply hidden killing intent flashed across Lin Yi's eyes. He suddenly raised his head and looked straight at Ma Jian. I'll say it again, your imagination is really rich. Unfortunately, it's too rich. The reason why I wandered around was purely because Meng Juiguang had been bothering me. He didn't want me to mine properly and kept tormenting me. I had no choice but to endure it. You still want to quibble when a disaster is imminent. You're simply daydreaming. Do you think I'll believe you? Ma Jian sneered. Lin Yi looked at him with a faint smile and said indifferently, it doesn't matter whether you believe me or not. I'm just a newbie. I casually wandered around the 10th mining area and caused a mine collapse. I even used it to kill Meng Juiguang. Why don't you guess what other people would think of such a ridiculous logic? Chapter 3957. What a joke. Since when does our law enforcement hall need to look at other people's expressions? Aren't you looking down on our law enforcement hall too much? Or are you looking down on our hall master? Ma Jian spoke in an aloof and disdainful tone. In the past, the law enforcement hall still had rules to follow. But after Ram Jia took office, under his leadership, the people under him could be said to be unscrupulous. In order to achieve their goals, they could do anything. They were recognized by the 3 great pavilions as the most tyrannical and overbearing in the history of the law enforcement hall, but at the same time, they were also the most capable generation. Most of the time, even the Elders Guild could not criticize Ram Jia and his subordinates. As for the public opinion of the outside world, they were completely disregarded. Just think about it, even the death of the Soaring Sky Pavilion supervising Deacon Nan Tianyong, who was on the same side, could be ignored to the point of not asking about it, just because Hallmaster Gong Yangjie was not interested in it. In this case, only Meng Juiguang had died, so naturally, it was not enough to enter Gong Yangjie's eyes. According to the current rules of the Law Enforcement Hall, as long as Hallmaster Gong Yangjie didn't interfere in the middle of a case, then his subordinates had absolute authority over the case. They didn't need to care about what the outside world or the higher-ups of the 3 great pavilions thought. This was because Gong Yangjie would bear all the pressure for them without any worries. This was where Ma Jian's confidence came from. Ram Jia definitely had no interest in this kind of small case. Under his protection, as long as he made up a reasonable excuse, Ma Jian could do whatever he wanted. Therefore, the matter of Su Lingqiong asking him to get rid of Lin Yi was simply a piece of cake in his eyes. This was completely out of Lin Yi's expectation. He was caught unprepared. In a place like the Law Enforcement Hall, and in the hands of Ma Jian, this time it was really a bit difficult. Ma Jian's strength was not considered strong. Lin Yi was confident that he could deal with him. However, if he dared to make a move in the law enforcement hall's territory, then needless to say, he would definitely die. Even if he had 10 lives, it wouldn't be enough for him to die, unless... Shangwan Laner intervened forcefully. Of course, this was a last resort, and Lin Yi believed that it was impossible for Shanghai Laner to turn a blind eye to it. It was just that this last resort was equivalent to admitting that the mine collapse was caused by him. "What do you want?" Lin Yi asked in a deep voice. This was the only way to deal with this situation. He could only take it one step at a time. "What do I want?" Ma Jian laughed and said proudly, "Of course I don't want to do anything. I'm a law enforcer, and you're the murderer who caused the mine collapse and killed Meng Juiguang. I'm just doing my job. I'm going to send you to the guillotine." Ma Jian originally thought that after he finished speaking, Lin Yi would definitely panic like a normal person. Unexpectedly, Lin Yi did not panic at all. Instead, he calmly raised his eyebrows and said, "Speaking of which, does your hall master, Ram Jia, know that you're acting so recklessly and covering the sky with one hand?" No matter how Ram Jia controlled his subordinates, no matter how he shielded his own people. But at least one thing was certain. No one in power would want a subordinate who acted recklessly. They only needed an obedient and capable watchdog. They wouldn't need a wastrel who acted on his own. This was the iron law. No matter how monolithic the law enforcement hall was, it must have its own internal rules. Even if Ram Jia didn't intervene personally. But this kind of case was absolutely impossible for Ma Jian to cover the sky with one hand. Otherwise, the law enforcement hall would have long been rotten. How could it have the power and influence it had today? "Hey, kid, is your brain broken? Or do you really think that you're a big shot after being called the #1 newcomer in the welcoming pavilion? Let me tell you, trash like you can't even be considered as a green onion. You can't even enter the eyes of our hall master Ram. So, you better give up on this thought as soon as possible. I dare to guarantee that even if I send you to the guillotine, Hall Master Ram will absolutely not spare you a glance." Ma Jian laughed without the slightest scruple. However, before he finished laughing, the secret door of the interrogation room suddenly opened. A person came in and said a few words in his ear. Ma Jian's face suddenly changed. Those two ants, do they really dare to say that? Did they turn a deaf ear to what I said to them before? Ma Jian clenched his teeth and clenched his fist. So that's how it is. Lin Yi's heart was relieved. Although the other person's voice was very low, with his extraordinary perception, he could more or less hear the general situation. The matter that the person told Ma Jian was about the confession of the 2 guards in the number 10 mining area. These 2 people were closest to the starting point of the mine collapse. They were summoned to be investigated like Lin Yi. Of course, the 2 of them were different from Lin Yi. Lin Yi was identified as a murderer by Ma Jian, and they were used as witnesses to convict Lin Yi. As early as the first time he took over the case, Ma Jian had already hinted to the 2 of them. What they should say and what they shouldn't say had already been recorded. In fact, in Ma Jian's plan, these 2 people didn't even need to deliberately make false testimonies like witnessing Lin Yi kill someone. They only needed to slightly embellish the situation of that day and tilt things in the direction of Lin Yi. As long as there was a reasonable logic, coupled with the confession of these 2 so-called witnesses, Ma Jian could firmly pin the crime on Lin Yi's head. If everything went well, it would not be difficult to send him to the guillotine. Originally, everything was under Ma Jian's control. However, what he didn't expect was that it was precisely the 2 guards that he had the most confidence in, who were not worth mentioning, that both of them had now betrayed him. Not only did the 2 guards not follow his instructions to make the confession against Lin Yi, but they also opened their mouths to exonerate Lin Yi. After Meng Juiguang came to mining area number 10, I don't know if it was for testing something or for some other reason. Anyway, he forced Lin Yi to dig everywhere. As a result, the mine collapsed. It's hard to say if there is a direct connection between the two, but even if there is a connection, the root cause is Meng Juiguang. He deserved to die in the mine collapse, and it has nothing to do with Lin Yi. These were the original words of the two guards. Although there were slight discrepancies between their words, the meaning was exactly the same. Hearing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but secretly rejoice in his heart. Fortunately, he saved the two guards when the mine collapse happened. Fortunately, these two were not people who would bite the hand that fed them. Otherwise, if they really gave false testimonies, he wouldn't be able to reason with them. Damn it, wouldn't it be a waste of effort? Chapter 3958. Before any case came to a conclusion, there must be evidence, no matter how far-fetched the evidence was, but there must be. This was the iron law that Ram Jia personally set down. From top to bottom in the law enforcement hall, no matter who it was, absolutely did not dare to go against it in the slightest. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. As long as the two guards did not testify against Lin Yi, Ma Jian would not have any evidence in his hands. Then, he would be unable to complete Su Lingchong's instructions and would not be able to touch a single hair on Lin Yi. Lord Law Enforcement Envoy, if there's nothing else, can I leave? Lin Yi patted his butt and stood up with a carefree expression. Wait, when did this law enforcement envoy say that you can leave? Or do you think that the law enforcement hall is a place that you can come and go as you please? Ma Jian said with an unfriendly expression. When Lin Yi heard this, he glanced at him and said with a smile that was not a smile, then what do you want? If I didn't hear wrongly earlier, you don't have the so-called evidence in your hands at all. Just for the sake of helping Su Lingchong settle a personal grudge, you're disregarding the law enforcement hall's rules. Are you sure that doing this is appropriate? Ma Jian was startled when he heard this, then he could not help but fly into a rage out of humiliation, and his face was extremely gloomy. Chapter 3959. Hee, you can't hold back anymore. What a complete idiot. This way, this enforcer can even save the chance to use the soul-searching technique. I really don't know why young Master Su would put trash like you in his eyes. Ma Jian sneered with a smug expression. Most people feared the law enforcement hall like a tiger. No matter how arrogant and overbearing they were in the outside world, once they were in the law enforcement hall, even if they were a dragon, they could only coil up, and even if they were a tiger, they could only lie down. The slightest bit of disrespect would cause them to die without a burial ground. Even Ma Jian didn't expect that Lin Yi would have the guts to make a move. Idiots to this extent were rare to find, even 1 in 10,000 people. However, this was good. Lin Yi's reaction was simply a confession. He didn't even need to use the soul-searching technique to sentence himself to death. The enforcer next to Ma Jian snorted disdainfully and reached out to grab Lin Yi. A mere newcomer of the Blue Cloud Pavilion who doesn't even amount to a fart dares to make a move in the law enforcement hall. Who do you think you are? Any outsider who dared to make a move in the law enforcement hall, no matter what their identity was, would be killed without mercy. This was Ram Jia's original words. Even if they directly killed Lin Yi here, they wouldn't have to bear any responsibility and would even be rewarded. In terms of strength, this enforcer and Ma Jian were both in the middle stage of the Foundation establishment stage, so they couldn't be considered weak. However, before he could even touch a hair on Lin Yi, his stomach was kicked without warning. His whole body was kicked several feet away and fiercely smashed into the iron wall. He couldn't get up for a long time. I'm indeed not much, but it's best for unrelated people not to come out and get in the way. Otherwise, if I attack too heavily, I might accidentally kill you. Lin Yi glanced at him coldly. Ma Jian's heart suddenly palpitated when he saw this. Although he had already seen Lin Yi's strength in the newcomer assessment, now he had to watch helplessly as his accomplice was defeated in one move. This was a bit too exaggerated. Humph, you talk big. I was just careless and let you sneak attack me. Do you think we, the enforcers, are vegetarian? Since you dare to make a move in the law enforcement hall, let's see how you die today. Ma Jian pretended to be tough on the surface, but in reality, he was a coward on the inside. As he spoke, one of his hands secretly reached for the secret bell under the table. His strength was not much stronger than that of his fallen companions, but he knew that he was no match for Lin Yi. However, this did not matter. After all, this was the law enforcement hall, where there were countless experts. As long as the secret bell rang, no matter how capable Lin Yi was, he could only obediently wait to be captured. Little did he know that his little trick, which he thought was clever, could not escape Lin Yi's eyes. Before he could touch the hidden bell, Lin Yi had already flashed behind him and grabbed his arm, not giving him a chance to succeed. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Hurry up and let go of me. Otherwise, as long as I call for help, you will definitely die. Ma Jian immediately felt the immense force from Lin Yi's hand. Even a middle-stage foundation establishment expert was still human. Not only was he afraid of death, he was also afraid of pain. Ma Jian's words were not false. Unfortunately, this was a specialized interrogation room. As long as the door was closed, no matter how he shouted for help, it would be a waste of effort. Moreover, if other people really saw this scene. If he was restrained by a mere Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomer, he would lose a lot of face. Okay. Lin Yi nodded his head indifferently and cooperatively let go of his opponent's arm. However, before Ma Jian could breathe a sigh of relief, the hand that Lin Yi had just let go of immediately grabbed his neck. Like a duck being grabbed by the neck, Ma Jian could not breathe. His face turned red and his eyes rolled back. This way, you should not have the strength to call for help, right? Lin Yi's eyes were piercingly cold. Looking at his expression, it seemed that he really wanted to start a massacre here. Ma Jian was choked to the point where he could not breathe. His heart was suddenly filled with infinite fear. Just now, even though he clearly saw that Lin Yi was about to make a move, he could not help but hope that Lin Yi would not be stupid enough to really start a massacre here. Otherwise, with his strength, even if he really was not a match for Lin Yi, he would not be so easily restrained. Watching helplessly as Ma Jian, a dignified middle-stage foundation establishment expert, was about to lose his life in the hands of Lin Yi, the other law enforcer at the scene finally leaned against the iron wall and struggled to get up. He said with difficulty, "Wait, don't kill him. Killing him will at most vent your anger. It won't do you any good at all. Why seek your own death?" Lin Yi glanced at him, then suddenly grinned and said slowly, "You want me to spare his life? That's fine too. If you help me do something, I can temporarily spare his dog life." "What is it?" This law enforcer's name was Niu Chang. He had been close friends with Ma Jian since childhood and could be considered as a brother who wore the same pants. At a time like this, he naturally could not leave Ma Jian to die. "Don't be nervous, it's just a small matter. It won't make things difficult for you." Lin Yi was not flustered at all. With a calm expression, he said, "Help me find a person who is also a Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomer like me. His name is Xiao Ran. Tell him that I am in trouble here and ask him to find someone to help me. But in order to prove that you are going, ask him to write me a note and bring it back. That's simple." Niu Chang frowned in disbelief. It was not difficult to understand why Lin Yi wanted to find someone to help him. But to find a mere Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomer, wasn't this too child's play? In any case, Lin Yi had openly made a move in the law enforcement hall. This was already an obvious fact, and it was something that could not be avoided. Such a crime was much more serious than killing Meng Juiguang. It must be known that there had never been a precedent of people who had done the same thing in the past being able to walk out of the law enforcement hall alive. From his point of view, Lin Yi's action was more or less grasping at the last straw of hope. Under Gong Yangjie's command, the enforcement hall had always been a one-man show of authority. Asking for help from an ordinary person was useless, unless it was one of the three big pavilion's lords. Unfortunately, for a mere Clear Cloud Pavilion newcomer to know one of the three big pavilion's lords, was this realistic? It's that simple. Lin Yi looked confident. From the moment he chose to make a move, he had already formulated this plan in his heart. After all, he was not a brainless person. If he did not have a backup plan, how could he rashly make a move in such a place? As for whether this method would work or not, he could only wait and see. Who said that a mere Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomer like him could not ask for the help of a top big shot? Chapter 3960. Don't let anyone in the law enforcement hall know about the situation here. Otherwise, you should be very clear about the consequences. Lin Yi warned, as long as there are any abnormal movements, I will kill him. At most, I will perish together with him. Anyway, I won't be able to live anymore. You know. Don't doubt that I can kill him before I die. Promise him first. Ma Jian shouted himself hoarse and panted, don't talk nonsense when you go out. Ma Jian wasn't stupid. This matter was caused by him. If Niu Chang went out and reported it to Ram Jia, then Lin Yi would definitely die, but Ma Jian wouldn't be able to live either. Even if he wasn't killed by Lin Yi, Ram Jia wouldn't let him go. He didn't report this matter and did it in private to flatter Su Lingchong. Ram Jia protected his subordinates, but if you were to mess around in private without any rules to speak of, then the law enforcement hall would be in a mess. If Lin Yi was killed, with Su Lingchong's help, the matter could probably be suppressed. But if it was exposed now, it would be strange if Ram Jia didn't punish him for killing his subordinates. Therefore, he was more nervous about Niu Chang's method than Lin Yi. Okay, I promise you. Niu Chang nodded and turned to leave. If Lin Yi's request was too excessive, he might have other thoughts. But if it was just a small matter like running errands for someone, and he knew that the other party was doing useless work, there was no need for him to take this risk. Of course, if that Xiao Ren really had a way, it would be a confrontation with someone of Su Lingchong's level. It had nothing to do with him, so there was no need to risk Ma Jian's life. After Niu Chang left, Lin Yi still held Ma Jian's neck with one hand. No matter what, this was a mid-stage Foundation establishment realm expert. Moreover, they were in the opponent's territory. If he relaxed even a little and the opponent broke free, he might be consigned to eternal damnation. However, Lin Yi still left him with a breath. After all, if he accidentally killed this guy, even if he really found someone to help him, it would be difficult for him to escape unscathed. It's useless. It doesn't matter who you find. Our law enforcement hall never gives face to anyone. I advise you to kowtow and admit your mistake as soon as possible. Maybe I can spare your little life. Ma Jian didn't believe that the newcomer could save Lin Yi. In the end, if it was useless, then he would still have to pinch him to death. Therefore, while threatening him, he also talked about the pros and cons. Since Lin Yi didn't have the resolve to fight to the death, then there was no need for him to be afraid. Lin Yi still couldn't escape from the palm of his hand. Sooner or later, he would be crushed to death in his hands as easily as crushing an ant. Bang! Before Ma Jian could finish speaking, Lin Yi raised his hand and punched him in the stomach. Otherwise, I will go find that grim-faced ghost and let him punish you personally. Ma Jian was shocked. The grim-faced ghost that Shanghai Laner mentioned was the immediate superior of their law enforcement hall, Ram Jia. If it was someone else who said these words, he could still treat it as an alarmist and ignore it. This was because everyone knew of Gong Yangjia's arrogance. He was a strong person who did not even place the higher-ups of the three great pavilions in his eyes. The words of these people, in his ears, were not even worth a fart. However, the first Miss Shangwan in front of him was not one of them. She was not a higher-up of the three great pavilions, nor did she have any power. However, her grandfather, Shanghai Tianhua, the powerful pavilion master of Soaring Pavilion, was the only one in the three great pavilions who could tame Ram Jia. Even a 1,000-li horse needed a talent scout. The reason why Gong Yangjia was able to reach his current level was because of Shangwan Tianhua's appreciation of him. He wasn't Shangwan Tianhua's personal disciple, but he had been just a single step away from becoming one. It was not that Shanghai Tianhua looked down on him, but Shanghai Tianhua once said, Ram Jia is the only genius I have seen in my life. No one can really teach him, except for himself. This sort of evaluation was the reason why Ram Jia had been able to roam the three great pavilions so arrogantly all these years. No one dared to point fingers at him, and he could ignore any of the so-called elders of the three great pavilions. The only exception was Shangwan Tianhua. Shanghai Laner was the only granddaughter that Shanghai Tianhua doted on. If she really wanted to find Ram Jia would definitely not make things difficult for her because of such a small matter. Moreover, this matter itself was Ma Jian who harbored evil intentions. He was instructed by Su Lingchong to avenge a personal grudge. If this was found out by Ram Jia, he would not even know how to write the word death. Greetings, Miss Shangwan. Ma Jian stammered as he bowed. Even if he disregarded his relationship with Ram Jia, the other party was still the first Miss of Soaring Pavilion. She was not someone that a mere law enforcement officer like him could afford to offend. Chapter 3961. Alright then, this guy didn't differentiate right from wrong and tried to search my soul. I'll have to ask little senior sister to help me get back at him. Lin Yi said without hesitation. Damn. Ma Jian was so scared that he peed his pants. If the soul-searching technique was used once, he would become a fool or a cripple. If it was used 100 times or 1,000 times more, not to mention his divine sense, even his brain would be squeezed dry. Soul-searching skill. You actually want to use the soul-searching skill on junior brother. Shanghai Laner was stunned, and then she looked at Ma Jian with an extremely unfriendly gaze. With her family background, even if she didn't like to practice, she had heard of the soul-searching skill. She was clear about the side effects of this divine skill. After saying this, Shanghai Laner didn't say anything. She turned around angrily and walked out of the interrogation room, leaving everyone in the room looking at each other. Time passed by bit. Lin Yi and Xiao Ran sat aside calmly. Anyway, Shanghai Laner, the young lady, had already come forward. They didn't have to worry about the other party's tricks at all. On the contrary, Ma Jian and Niu Chang were restless at the moment, especially Ma Jian, the mastermind, who was sweating profusely and panicking. After 30 minutes, Shanghai Laner came back. As she pushed the door and entered, she muttered to herself with dissatisfaction, "Cold-faced ghost is really unreasonable. He doesn't even want to come out to see me. He's so hateful." Hearing these words, Ma Jian immediately heaved a sigh of relief. It was fortunate that Hallmaster Gong Yangjia had a cold temperament and never paid attention to anyone. Otherwise, if this young miss really reported this to him, even if he was lucky enough not to die this time, it would be hard for him to escape punishment. However, before he had time to rejoice, he saw the two black curtain experts who followed Shanghai Laner in. His scalp immediately went numb. He felt dizzy and almost fainted on the spot. From their attire, it could be seen that these two people were different from other ordinary law enforcers. They were known as the Black Curtain Law Enforcers, and they specialized in targeting the members of the law enforcement hall. If the members of the law enforcement hall gave themselves away, they would suffer a fate worse than death. Ma Jian, you're suspected of abusing your authority to take revenge. Come with us. One of the Black Curtain Law Enforcers said. Then, without giving Ma Jian any chance to speak, he took a step forward and the steel chain in his hand whizzed out. Before Ma Jian could react, he was already tightly locked by the fine steel chains. His joints were pierced by the special hooks on the steel chains. Every part of his body was so deep that his bones could be seen. Ma Jian didn't even have the chance to struggle. With a miserable howl, he fell to the ground. Every time he struggled, he would feel excruciating pain. He could only howl miserably as the Black Curtain Law Enforcers dragged him like a dead dog. He was dragged away in front of everyone. Lin Yi and Xiao Ran's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. The law enforcement hall was indeed a notoriously vicious place. Their cruel methods were truly outrageous. It was better not to come here in the future. When he was about to be dragged to the door, Ma Jian gritted his teeth and struggled to turn his head to look at Shanghai Laner and Lin Yi. He said unwillingly, You didn't see the hall master. How did this happen? Shanghai Laner stuck out her tongue. She shrugged like Lin Yi did in the past and said, I didn't see that cold-faced ghost, but these two guys said that they received orders from cold-faced ghost to settle this matter for me. So, I brought them here. After hearing this, Ma Jian rolled his eyes and passed out on the spot. Then, he was really like a dead dog. He couldn't even make a sound as he was dragged away by the Black Curtain Law Enforcers. As for what would happen to him in the end, no one knew. Anyway, he would definitely be miserable if he fell into the hands of the Black Curtain Law Enforcers. Looking at this scene, Lin Yi was secretly shocked. Ram Jia was indeed a famous and powerful figure. Nothing that happened in the law enforcement hall could escape his eyes and ears. The only difference was whether he wanted to ask about it or not. He had no choice but to rejoice. Fortunately, his reaction had been fast enough, and he had thought of asking Sheng Wanlan for help. Otherwise, if the soul-searching technique had really been used on him, and all his secrets had fallen into Gong Yangjia's eyes, he would never be able to leave the law enforcement hall. Okay, I've vented my anger. This place is so dark and smelly. Let's leave this place quickly. Shanghai Laner frowned and covered her nose. If it weren't for saving Lin Yi, she wouldn't be willing to come to the law enforcement hall. The three of them immediately left the law enforcement hall. Shanghai Laner immediately separated from Lin Yi because she had something to deal with at home. Before leaving, she said, It's my birthday in a few days. Junior brother, don't forget to come. After saying that, she didn't give Lin Yi a chance to speak. She waved her hand and skipped away. Birthday. Lin Yi shook his head with a bitter smile. He had heard this news a long time ago. At that time, Meng Juiguang used the excuse of preparing a birthday gift for someone to exchange waste jade for good jade. However, he didn't expect that it was prepared for his senior sister. With the friendship between Lin Yi and Shanghai Laner, such an important day couldn't be neglected. Not to mention that the other party had helped him a lot today. He had to take the opportunity to thank her.